Okay.
Lion of Judah Society.
Psalm 7.
מזמור זין, שיגיון לדוד, אשר שר לאדוני על דברי חוש בין ימיני.
O Lord my God, in thee do I put my trust.
אדוני אלוהי בך חסיתי.
Save me from all them that persecute me and deliver me.
הושיעני מכל רודפי והצילי.
Lest he tear my soul like a lion, rending it in pieces, while there is none to deliver.
פן יטרוף כאריה נפשי, פורק ואין מצי.
O Lord my God, if I have done this,
אדוני אלוהי, אם עשיתי זאת, אם יש.
if there be iniquity in my hands, if I have rewarded evil unto him that was at peace with me, yea, I have delivered him that without cause is mine enemy. Let the enemy persecute my soul and take it. Yea, let him tread down my life upon the earth and lay mine honor in the dust. Arise, O Lord, in thine anger. Lift up thyself because of the rage of mine enemies, and awake for me to the judgment that thou hast commanded. So shall the congregation of the people compass thee about. For their sakes, therefore, return thou on high. The Lord shall judge the people. Judge me, O Lord, according to my righteousness, and according to mine integrity that is in me. O let the wickedness of the wicked come to an end, but establish the just. For the righteous God trieth the hearts and reins. My defense is of God, which saveth the upright in heart. God judgeth the righteous, and God is angry with the wicked every day. If he turn not, he will whet his sword. He hath bent his bow and made it ready. He hath also prepared for him the instruments of death. He ordaineth his arrows against the persecutors. Behold, he travaileth with iniquity, and hath conceived mischief, and brought forth falsehood. He made a pit, and digged it, and is fallen into the ditch which he made. His mischief shall return upon his own head, and his violent dealing shall come down upon his own pate. I will praise the Lord according to his righteousness, and will sing praise to the name of the Lord Most High.
Erev Tov, Laila Tov, Boker Tov, good evening, good night, good dawning, good morning. Lion of Judah Society. T to T, Testify Tuesday.
I'm gonna testify.
Yes. So here at the seventh of the seventh Psalm, Psalm 7, and there we have found we found a rockstone mix that goes with this Torah portion, reading and feeding right here. Let's bring the feature image right here. Wayyetzei. And he and Yaakov, the he, and he went forward, and he went forth, he went forward. So we found a rockstone mix right there. Wanted to share that as one of the themes right here is Yaakov's ladder, Jacob's ladder. We have Jacob's ladder as a theme right here. Here, the seventh sabbatical study for this Shabbat strong, picking up with Genesis here. Genesis chapter 28, from verse 10 to chapter 32, verse 2. For this Wayyetzei, Wa and Yetzei, and he went forward, went to toe, and Jacob went forward to Pandan Aram, to the tabletop land. Pandan Aram, interesting name right there. But here in this Torah reading and feeding, we also have the Haftarah, the prophet's reading from Hosea chapter 12, verse 12 to chapter 14, verse 10. And in the Brit Chadasha, in the New Covenant, New Testament, the renewed covenant reading, we have Yohanan, we have the Besorah, Al-Pi Yohanan, the Gospel on the mouth of John, we have John chapter 1, focus verses 19 to verse 51, Chavarim. So right here, we have the third and the fourth aliyot, third and fourth Torah reading and feeding. Also right here, we have today's daily psalm here for this T to T Testify Tuesday for the evening podcast. I know it's kind of late in the evening. For some, it's already night. For others, it is the dawn of the new day. So shalom to those who love shalom, and no peace to the wicked, saith Yahweh Eloheinu, saith he who be our almighty power. Father, God and Father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, and Jacob. So here we have Jacob. Jacob, wake up, Jacob going forward. But first he stops off, he has a dream, right? And that's the Jacob's ladder right there, and also the incident concerning the rock stone. And yeah, that's one of the themes right here. Also with the tune. Let's share a little bit of the tune right here. Boom, 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 boom. Is that the instrumental? Yeah, we got the rock stone, the instrumental right there. But just hear a little bit of it as we come forward with the evening, podcast right here, between the evening of the third, right, and moving into the, the fourth day right here. Yeshua Shalom, y'all. Rockstone.
What's my pillow? Rockstone, what's my pillow? Rockstone, what's my pillow? I said, rockstone was my pillow. Rockstone was my pillow.
Yeah, the man say, Rockstone was my pillow, could not find place for sleep. But them empty, we have to find food for eat. Every day we terrorize by soldiers and police. When they think them a strong and they think them a dead. From them a play cowboy and Indian and chief. From the first to the third straight up to 7th Street. One thing in our mind of it jump with the base. I make it in a life and inheritance to me. Them pay off, self-employed, cannot get lay off. But the work me have, can't even get a day off. Who did want to stop me now, them find out, say them way off. Alright, so me say one by one, we stepping out of Babylon. And then one by one, Hill King fella say I the conquering lion.
Rockstone, what's my pillow? Rockstone, what's my pillow?
Raga, Mali. Help us now, take us from the slum. Never give up, matter what, strictly find your bun. Hey, Rasta, take us from the slum. Never give up, matter what, King Selassie, I bless you. Separation is a thing, could be no harder time. Got to widen your views, gotta broaden your mind. What we find in the ghetto, nowhere else can no find. Hunger, poverty, a system so unkind. As a matter of fact, there is an aftershock. When come ground, us my bed and my pillow was a rock. Try to make it through the system, all those were lost. Yet nothing new to try, and so I ain't gonna stop. All the time they write a book on you. All sorts of other crap they would have put on you. Yet when you're in there, they would look on you. They would only stand and wanna wipe the foot on you. But so see I know, Zion down, Ethiopia, Africa, fashion, liberate the poor, hey, manala. To me, Selassie, them off the war. Read the Bible, turn to beats and praise the Lord. Goodbye, Babylon, goodbye, goodbye. Open up, Zion door, Mount Zion, Ethiopia for sure. Children of Israel, children of Israel.
Songs of the on the land, the peace with righteousness, a man. Brother correction in a man, preaching out to man and no man. Give riches to King Solomon. No, my trouble a top, cap on a buck on a chop. Sweet the thing I was to the man. Man is coming in again here, bro. Jackie like on in a bump where I'm. When it's the sun, if you can't take that, I then got to use can talk. I found a mic bag, I'm up in a chat. Then me head red, me head in a flat. No fear on a mouse, no fear on a rat. Pray to jam, me never will stop. We're hot, no cold, we're cold, no hot. Live in a house, and live in a flat. Up in a Zion, the righteous will top. Jab blue, break the devil cannot.
Rockstar, what's my pillow? Rockstar, what's my pillow? I said, Rockstar was my pillow. Rockstar was my pillow. Blackjack's Dream. Jacob's Dream, Blackjack's Dream, and the Rockstone Revelation. Rockstone Revelation. Let me share this right here, the part one. A little bit too big to upload, so he's compressing it. But let's share a little bit.
Behold a ladder, mutzav, that was set, that was standing, arza, that was standing, mutzav, arza, that was set upon the arza, upon the earth. With Rosho, or some say Virosho, but we say with Rosho, and its head, its ras, the Rosho, Magia, Hashemaima. It didn't say Shemaim with a Yod Mim, Chabarim. It says Magia, Hashemaima. And it was the top of it, the Rosho, the Ras, Rosho, reached to heaven. And behold, Wehine, Malake Elohim, Olim, with your Redeemer bow. And behold, the angels of Elohim. Right? Behold, the angels of Elohim. What were they doing? They were ascending. Right? Olim. Like the Aliyah, they were Olim. With your Redeem. And were descending. Bow. Not bow, but bow. Right? Bow. Right? On it, on him, on it. So what about this ladder? What about Jacob's ladder? How does that connect with we are climbing Jacob's ladder? How are we climbing Jacob's ladder? And the significance of that word that we have as well, spoken by Adonenu, Yeshua HaMoshiach, Yeshua HaNotzri, Robeinu, speaking those very words. We have that thinking, what is it, the gospel according to Yohanan, John's gospel, right? Speaking about the angels ascending and descending, the angels ascending and descending. Now there's the two truths, we spoke about this before. There's two truths. There's the outer, the peshat, the plain, the natural type, which we look at first, from the phi cycle, right, to the meta-phi cycle, right, from the natural to the supernatural, from the earthly to the heavenly. Note that the ladder, the sulam in the Hebrew, the mesalal bamarinya, but here in the Hebrew, the sulam, it says, Wahine sulam, mutzab aritza, mutzab aritza. It was set upon the earth. It stood upon the earth. The ladder, it stood upon the earth. It was set up upon the earth. Now, when we now take it to the meta, more to the meta or the spiritual, psycho-spiritual, and looking at the 7 bands of the prism. The prism, the spectrum, and the proper order of the rainbow, right? The proper order. We're not going to somewhere over the rainbow. That's turning the rainbow upside down, right? The turning of things upside down is despised, right, by he who be, because confusion. But when we look at the spectrum and the colors in their proper order, right, in the righteous order, we have the red at that groundation. We have the red, the orange, the yellow, the green, the blue. You know what I mean? So we have those colors, the blue or daytime sky, right? The purplish, like the nighttime sky, or the it's what they call it? Yeah, the purple, like the nighttime sky, right? Then we have that sort of fuchsia color, right, at that top, at that heavenly. We call that in Amharic wine bewucha, like water, like when you have red wine and you add a little bit of water, like what Cadusa Paulo says, adding a little bit of water, with the wine, just a little bit of water. We've had that in the gospel. But what happens to the color, that particular color right there, that's that fuchsia color, that is that 7th color. But what we have there as well, and you can check this out at the Rastafari Groundation. I'm going to have to pick up a copy of that right here so we can follow up with another vid and just continue to kind of connect that right there with the 7, you can say those seven rings or rungs of the ladder. So as we mentioned, you have red, because the red, the Adama. What's the Adama? The Adama, right? The Adama, we have Adam, then even by permutation we have Adam, red, ruddy, red, the red, rich soil. That red, ruddy, rich soil. You can even see this even in this icon, this eye trait right here as well, the red, rich soil. Right, that ruddy earth. You see it around the world. You see it in different places. So that's facts. Right, it says that Adam was created even by virtue of his name. So we have that red is that groundation. Right, so we have these colors correspond, right, in the mystery school of the King of Kings Christ to order, will, wisdom, righteousness, love, patience, mercy. These 7 from the groundation is order. Order. 2nd is will. 3rd is wisdom. 4th is righteousness. See, this corresponds with those 4 colors that is found on the banner of salvation. Yahuwah Nisi, Jehovah Nisi, my banner. Xavier Alamayin. So we have order, will, wisdom, righteousness corresponding to the red, orange, yellow, and green. Order. Order. That's what it says. Order in the court. The order. Right? After the order of Melchizedek. So order. That's the key right there. That order, and that corresponds with Torah, with the Orit, the Torah. Right? Then we have the orange. Right, almost like the infrared. And we can look at the radio waves, the red, and then the infrared waves, the orange, and then the visible light, which is the yellow. Then the green, right, which is the heaven at the heavenly point or at the uppermost point of the banner of the flag. All right, so we talk about which way the proper colors are, well, according to the testimony of His Divine Majesty, according to the testimony of our Judeo-Christian covenant way, we know that it's green, yellow, and red coming from heaven to earth. In other words, in descending from heaven to earth, the colors, the order of the colors is green, yellow, and red. But the orange is there too because we have the Arma, we have Yehuda Mo Anbesa. So when we're looking at those colors there, and we compare that with the teaching of His Majesty, and then the science, we're talking about real science, the Da'at, right, the Ilket, the Gnosis, the knowledge. So we're talking about Jacob's ladder. Remember, he came from the well. Get that right there, the well of the seventh. He reaches a certain spot, right? Takes a stone, right, for his pillow. He lays down there to go to sleep, and he has a dream, and he dreams of a what? A ladder, right? A ladder that's set on the earth and whose top, Rosho, as it says, with Rosho, Magia, Hashemaima. Now note that Shemaima is related to Shemayim, but they are different. How is Shemaima different than Shemayim? Well, in the same way that Mitzrayim is different than Mitzrayim. So we're going to touch on that. One is more of a singular sense, and the other is more of a dual sense. Mitzrayim, dual sense for the Egypt, Upper and Lower Egypt, and then we have Shemayim, right, for the heavens in the dual, right, at least two or more sense. But here,
That's correct right there, but it's a little update. Yeah, so when we say like Mitzrayim, that's to say like, just in a simple translation, quote, strong quote, Egypt. Actually, it's like the two mitzvahs, like the two lands, we can say, like the two, right? The two upper and lower, or we can say the eastern side of the Nile and the western side of the Nile. The eastern side was the Kemet part. The western side was the desert, but then we have upper and lower. So even ancient Egypt is like twofold in two ways, in a sense, the upper and lower, and also the east side of the Nile and the west side. But be that as it may, Mitzrayim, when we find in the biblical Hebrew, it says like Mitzrayim, right? It's like saying in the direction of Mitzrayim, in the direction of, we say, Egypt. Shemayim is heaven, right? So saying Shemaima is like saying heavenward, like towards the heaven, Shemaima. So in Hebrew, Shemayim is the heavens, but to say like Il Shemaima, Il Shemaima, like towards the heavens, towards the sky, Also interesting, I don't know if I bring it out in this audible, in the Amharic, we say like Samai. So we have it both syllabated in the Hebrew, Shemayim, and then in the Amharic, unsyllabated, we have like Samai, like Samai, the sky. Also, we have Semayawi. Now, Semayawi is a way of saying like the color blue. So in the rural Amharic, right, the Afro-Shemitic tongue, beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, in that language there, to say Semayawi is to say like, well, one level heavenly, but as a color, that's to say like the color blue. So we're just examining like the spectrum. I don't have a spectrum right here, like easily available. I could probably find one and bring it up. But it's like when we were showing, okay, there's the flag there, and you see the flag with the colors in the proper order, of the spectrum, with the red Remember Adam. We say Adam in English, Adam, the Western Gentile pronunciation, Adam. Hebraically, Adam came from the Adama, that reddish brown ground. And then we have from the Adam, we have also Edom, and we also have Adomni, just like reddish, that kind of reddish brown, reddish brown ground sense. So this is about the closest that we have right here. Somebody say the Jed column, the spinal column, but it brings out, we could say, it's a metaphor Hebraically, of this ladder, of Jacob's ladder. Think about the spinal column. In the spinal column, like say if you decide to wiggle your toe, you decide you want to wiggle your toe or whatnot like that, or move your foot, if everything is functioning, you send a signal, you send a messenger or a message, even like to your hand, to your fingers to do something. Of course, these things almost come in a sense involuntarily, what I mean? Because we're so used to just doing things, think to pick up a cup, pick up something, or put down something, to walk, to move your foot, we just do it, right? But understand, when we understand, man, what is man? It says, what is man that thou art mindful of him? So even within creation, one of the Psalms, particularly Psalm 19, is it Psalm 19? Let me just check. Yes, Psalm 19. Psalm 19, as the Chabarim and the Talmudim, the fellow disciples, no doubt know, but just to be reminded, is theme the two witnesses, right? Two witnesses. So what particular two witnesses do we have in that song, pointing out the two witnesses of Yahweh Eloheinu, of he who be our Elohim, our creator? The two witnesses are the witness in nature, right? Nature, or in ancient Mitzrayim, some might say nature, right? In the natures, in the elements, the elementals, that some might say is gods or attributes or principles, but in nature, right? His wisdom, his chokmah, his wisdom in nature, but also the second witness that we have is in Torah. It's in the scriptures. It's in his word. It's in his revelation, as the Hashem Yahweh often is brought out as the self-revealing. How can you say that he's the self-revealing, right? Creator, almighty power, and he reveals himself, right, even through the revelations and through the word. So as we match up, the creation or nature and the word, so the word became flesh. Yeah. So even here, in looking at Jacob's ladder, we can see where the basic connection is there. Now, of course, some will say, oh, this is in other religions and other, well, he created the heaven, and the heavens over all, and the rain that falls on the good and the bad alike. But there's some things that are universal, right? Some universal truths, right? And we're seeking to bring out those universal truths Torah-wise, right? And seeing, well, what does it link up with based on those two witnesses in nature, right? And in his word. And using his word, right, to help to teach us, right, and also to inquire, right, into his creation. It says his wisdom in creating the heavens and earth. Many psalms and areas of scripture, it speaks like that. And some might think it's just poetical, but it's a little more than poetical. So I just paused this was like part 2. So it's a shorter audible right here, but previously recorded. And I was listening for it. But I don't know whether I'm going to say it in this audible. So right here, we kind of patch this in right there. When we're talking about Mitzrayim. Sometime in the scripture, it will say Mitzrayim. So Mitzrayim would be like Egypt, towards Egypt. So he went Mitzrayim, towards Egypt. Or it went Shemaima, like skyward or heavenward. So the at the end in the biblical Hebrew in Mitzrayim and Shemaima, in these words, it points a directional. It's kind of like a directional sense within the biblical Hebrew, in the direction of, in the direction of, like even in, I think, a previous Torah portion where, right here, where we're at the 7th, Wayyetzei, where Jacob goes forward. If we go back to the scripts, it says that he went forward, Harana. It says to Haran, but it brings out the sense that he went forward Harana. So what is Harana? In fact, I think we can bring this out right here Let's see if you can see this in the Hebrew. So here, let's look at this right here just for a moment, just to bring out the point, and then we'll just a little bit more to this audible Black Jack or Black Jacob's dream and the Jah Rockstone revelation. We call this part one of a prior recording here, but just patching in some information that became known to us, as we continued in our studies. So ones and ones picking up here. So here you see Haran, 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 right? Haran, right? Haran. They say mountaineer, Haran. Well, that's questionable there. Let's go down to Strong's, right? Yeah, so Strong's has it more correct. BDB says mountaineer, but they're confusing Haran and Haran. Har, right? Har is mountain, right? So they're confusing Har and Har, Har, Har. So when you look at even the Hebrew or the Asherit, you see that it's the same, similar looking letter, but there's this here is closed. I don't know if you can see it, the first letter here. We'll bring it out in another demonstration. But here it says to be burned. This is the verb harar. This is harar, harar. Now we have harar, harar, ha and ha, different. Ha and ha, ha. So this is harar, not harar. Harar means mountainous because the word har is mountain and harar is mountainous. Very interesting because the man child, lives to Farai, aka, the man child, Rastafari, as the psalm says of Ethiopia. This man was born there, and we see that he was born in a province called Harar. But this is not to be confused with Harar, Harar. So Harar, mountainous, and Harar, Harar means to be burned, to be scorched, to be charred. But now here in this verse, this is the first verse here in this seventh sabbatical study for Wayyetzei, where it says, and Yaakov went out from Be'er Sheva and went toward Haran. But now when we look into the verse, here they have the Greek Haran. We look into the verse itself. Let's bring out the verse. Here we go. We'll use this right here. Right? It says Wayyetzei. So this Torah portion, Wayyetzei. Right? Other Yehudi, other speakers based on their mother tongue would say Vayyetzei, Vayyetzei. We say Wayyetzei, like the Yemenis, Yehudi, right? Wayyetzei, Wayyetzei, Wa and Yetzei. And he went forth. Wayyetzei, and he going forth. Now, Yatzah means he went forward. Yatzah, he went forward. Yetzei, he is going forward. He is going forward. It's kind of the action going on, right? Yatzah means the action is past. He went out, he came out, but you see the sense of to exit, because Jacob is leaving his homestead, his family homestead, for his mom, his pops, his mom, Yitzhak and Rivka and his brother that is a little bit salty, he's a little bit red, against and speaking about Esau, and he's going forward, right, to Haran. But let me read the verse and see if you can hear it right here. Wayyetzei Yaakov Mia Be'er Sheba Wayelek Harana. So here it has, let me highlight it right here, just to bring out that sense of Mitzrayim, Mitzrayimah, Egypt, Egypt towards Egypt, Egypt word, like when they say in Old English, Egypt word or heaven word. Yeah, that's that Old English, heaven word. So to say heaven in the Hebrew, right, Shemayim, and to say heaven word, like towards the heaven, Shemaim, right, Shemaim, right, Egypt, Mitzrayim, Egypt towards Egypt, Egypt word is to say Mitzrayim. So here, the highlighted word right there, it says Harana, Harana. So it says Wayelek, the phrase, Wayelek, Harana, modern Hebrew, Vayelech, Vayelech, Harana, right? Ancient, Wayelek, Harana, modern, Vayelech, Harana. So he went, Wayelek, where did he go? He went, right? Like I say, he tried it, he walked, he tried it, right? He went Harana. So now the word itself is Haran, but in the phrase it's Harana. So the there at the end of the noun would make it come out to be understood as he went to where did he went. He didn't just go Haran, but he went towards. Like he's like, so the idea of him traveling now in that direction, coming out from his homestead, right? As it says, Wayyetzei, Yaakov and Jacob came out, me from Be'er Sheba. He came out from Be'er Sheba, the well of the seven, right? The well of the oath, also known as the well of the oath, the well of the covenant. But here they bring it out in BDB, Be'er Sheba or Be'er Sheba, well of the sevenfold oath. Now, Sheba means seven, right? So when one say, oh, you're getting into the new ageism, I don't know what you're talking about. We're in the new covenant. You know what I mean? So, your new ages and what should be the old ageism. It says the new covenant. That's new, right? That's new, yes? All right. But what we're connecting here, what they can't escape, is the fact that he came out from the well of the sevenfold oath. Right? So both in Sheba is seven, and also it's a sense of an oath, right? The sense of an oath. So city at the south edge of Yisrael, it says right here, just to bring it out for the people, right? So here we have Sheba, right? Two ways that it's written in the Hebrew, Sheba, Sheba'ah, Sheba'ah, Sheba, Sheba. Some will say Sheva, Sheva. Modern Hebrew, Sheva. Ancient pointing, Sheba, right? And we also have Shiva, Shiva. Modern Hebrew, Shiva, Shiva. Ancient pointing, Shiba'ah, Shiba'ah. So what does Sheba and Shiva mean? It's seven, right? For the number, the cardinal number, the ordinal number, seven, right? And this various combination. It's a primitive or ancient, a prime, right? Afro-Shemitic. It's a prime Afro-Shemitic cardinal number. Sheba, Sheba, also Shiva, right? As the sacred full one. So Hebraically, the number seven and Afro-Shemitically had a sense of being like the full number. Like I want to say the perfect number, right? The full number. It's kind of interesting. When we come up like to Wisdom Wednesday, it's the fourth day of the Shabbat, and often we say it's like the heart of the week. And it reminds us of what is said of the menorah. The menorah, the menorah, the lampstand, falsely called candlesticks, right? But lampstand, according to Torah, the lampstand, the menorah, when he gives the instruction, right, to Moshe, to the Israelite, Yisraelim, he says that, and there'll be 3 branches on this side and 3 branches on that side. But we know that it's a 7 lamps, but there's a center lamp, right? The center lamp, right? So when we even talk about even the so-called 6-point star, right? This is what we're looking at when we're understanding to read patterns. Be that as it may. So we also have 7 times. The implication also is the week. So when we say Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov, Shavua, Shavua is the week of 7 days. Shavua, like a set of 7. Shavua, right? Tov, Tov. Modern Hebrew, Shavua Tov, Shavua, Shavua, Shavua. So it's an indefinite, it's an extension, an indefinite number, right? Because remember, 3 on one side, 3 on the next side, and then 1 in the middle, right? So 3 and 3, 6, and then the center branch, we could say the center, right? Making the 7. So here, Harana. Yes, let's get this.
But here we have Hashemaima, to heaven, to the heaven, right? I know what to say, the true heaven, right? And behold, the angels of Elohim ascending and descending on it. And behold, Wehine Yahweh Nitzab Alayo. And behold, he who be, who he be, stood, it said beside, right? Stood beside him, right? Or stood beside him. Now we're looking at the Chumash here. Let's look at the KJV, what it says, and behold, stood above it. So now in the KJV it says that, and Yod Hey Weh Hey Yahweh and Adonai stood above it and said, I am Yod Hey Weh Hey, the Elohei of Abraham, thy father, and the Elohei and the Elohim of Yitzhak, the land whereon thou liest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed. And you say that, well, race is not in the Bible. You know, people say that. Well, that's true in the context from a Western Gentile state of mind, but that's not our fault, all this race and racial talk. You have to look at the times of the Gentiles, and the Gentiles are to blame for that one right there, because we live in the times of the Gentiles, the Goyim, the nations, particularly those ruling nations, the Anglo-American nation, the Anglo-American Empire, Mother Akka, Mother England, Great Britannia, the UK, the Akka, right, and her daughter. Right? This is exactly what the prophecy says, what the prophecy says concerning these latter days and times. But when it says seed, right, it's important for you to understand that seed, the word seed is the true word for race, quote, end quote, within the Bible. Probably going to do a little vlog on that just to bring it out, just so that one can understand. Now, that's not what you have been led to believe, right, in the world, flesh, and counterfeit Christianities, but it's the truth. Ye shall know the truth. So get to know that for yourself and be free, right? So here we have Genesis 28 and 14, and going on, and thy seed or thy race. Remember, this is told to the patriarch. The patriarch is being told all of this in a dream, right? And thy seed, thy race shall be as the dust of the earth, and thou shalt spread abroad to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. There we have the sign of the cross. See that sign? There's that sign, the sign of the cross, the cardinal points, right? And we say the cross within the true cross, right? The true cross. And in thee, and in thy seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed. So, to whom more is given, more is required. Ain't that true, right? And behold, right, I am with thee. So he who be, Hashem said to Abinu Yaakov, that I will be with thee. I am with thee and will keep thee in all places, keep you in everything and everywhere, whither way thou goest, and will bring thee again to this land. For I will not leave thee until I have done that which I have spoken to thee of. Now it's interesting because Yaakov, Jacob, if the disciples, brothers and sisters, you'll recognize this. Others might just be maybe hearing this, or as they might just check out certain videos and not studying for themselves. But just for those for all of us right here, that recall what just happened previous to this concerning the birthright, right? The soul birthright, right? And the controversy concerning the baraka, the blessing. Right, but note this here: how he who be the Almighty, and say, "Why did you steal from Esau?" No, because that's the way it was supposed to be. So Rebecca did a good thing. If you hear one talking about woo, Rebecca, she tricked, she made Jacob trick her husband. All of these, they don't have the spirit of truth. Those who speak like that, maybe they are believing what other people, have been preaching. That's happened to some of us before we start to study and pray for the Holy Spirit, the Ira, to guide I and I. So sometimes, you're regurgitating what others have said. You know what I mean? Even when we are speaking these things, go look it up. See it for yourself. Get to know it for yourself. If it's not so, then speak up. Then speak up. Open rebuke is better than secret love. Right, but don't be one of these ones who are not born again, who are children of the lie, who still have the anger and the just a head knowledge on them. They're throwing out stuff, but they're not born again. Just the key right there. Right, it's not just about intellectual knowledge or rah, but the intellect does have a role and a responsibility. That's why the Almighty give it to we, right, to be used in His way. Right, truth and life, and not to go zigzag astray. So Jacob, Yaakov, awakened. He awaked out of his sleep. When will black Jacob wake up? Give thanks. Heal up thy brother. Ross Faith, Ross Simon Faith. Check out that tune, brothers and sisters. I hope these tunes are circulating and ones are sharing, the co-laborers' works. Check us out at RastafariGroundation.org. Yes, sir. But give thanks to that tune. Wake up, Jacob. Right? Also,
Lion
Emerald,
of Judah,
Sahar, Ahad as well. You know what I mean? The sound system as well. Wake up, Jacob, and all the other ones amongst the brothers and sisters near and far that will be inspired. We are to be inspired. There's so much inspirational words in your word when you have the spirit, right, and the right mind and heart to receive. So Jacob awaked out of sleep, and he said, surely, Yod Hey Weh Hey. Some would say Yud Hey Veh Hey, right? Or we could say Yemen Hoy Wawe Hoy, but the YHWH Yahweh. He says, surely Yahweh, surely he who be is in this place, this makom, this spot, and I knew it not. That's powerful right there, brothers and sisters. He says, surely he who be is in this spot, and I didn't even know it. He was ignorant of that fact, that he who be was in this spot. He just stopped here because he's trying to, think about this. Jacob is trotting all alone. You talk about trotting alone. He's not alone in that sense, but no one else is accompanying him. It's not like the case of with his father, right? His grandfather Abraham sent a faithful servant. Some think it's Eliezer, but it doesn't say so in the text. But you could think so. It could be. But he sends a servant to get a wife, and he has to go and get his own, right? Because this whole incident with his brother, right? His brother. Wake up, Jacob. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up.
Lion of Judah Society. All right. Yes. A little bit right there on the ladder. The Sulam, and what's implied by it. It's kind of interesting because in the Gospel of John, it's like Yeshua is bearing witness to the same incident that occurred with patriarch Jacob. About you'll see angels ascending and descending. But right here, the rock stone, a little bit on the rock stone right there. Let's segue right here to this Torah reading and feeding. So here we're at the third and the fourth reading. I like to present the third and fourth reading. So stand by. We have the evening psalm, but let's just touch on today's daily psalm, Psalm 90. Right, Psalm 90, a prayer of Moshe, the Ish Ha-Elohim. Stay tuned.
Shalom again, Shalom Chavarим. Here we have today's daily psalm. We have Psalm 9 according to the royal order of Ethiopian Hebrews, after the order of Melchizedek, the righteous king, even the King of Kings, Kagamal, Haile Selassie, HaKadosh, Baruch Hu, Baruch Hashem, 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 Hashem.
Yes. Mizmor Tzadi, Mizmor Tzadi, the 90th psalm right here, a prayer of Moshe, the Ish, the man of the Elohim, the man of the true good, the true God, right here, the 90th psalm, Shema Yisrael.
Psalm 90.
תהילים ספר רביעי מזמור צדה תפילה למשה איש האלוהים אדוני
Lord, thou hast been our dwelling place in all generations.
אדוני מעון אתה היית לנו בדור ודור, בדור ודור, בדור ודור, בדור ודור.
Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever thou hadst formed the earth and the world, and the world, and the world, and the world, and the world.
ומעולם עד עולם, עד עולם, עד עולם, עד עולם, עד עולם, עד עולם.
Even from everlasting to everlasting to everlasting to everlasting to everlasting to thou art God, art God, art God, art God.
אתה אל, 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 אל.
Thou turnest man to destruction, and sayest, Return, ye children of men. For 1,000 years in thy sight are but as yesterday when it is past, and as a watch in the night. Thou carriest them away as with a flood. They are as asleep. In the morning they are like grass which groweth up. In the morning it flourisheth and groweth up. In the evening it is cut down and withereth. For we are consumed by thine anger, and by thy wrath are we troubled. Thou hast set our iniquities before thee, our secret sins in the light of thy countenance. For all our days are passed away in thy wrath. We spend our years as a tale that is told. The days of our years are 60 years and 10, and if by reason of strength they be 80 years, yet is their strength labor and sorrow. For it is soon cut off, and we fly away. Who knoweth the power of thine anger? Even according to thy fear, so is thy wrath. So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. Return, O Lord, how long? And let it repent thee concerning thy servants. O satisfy us early with thy mercy, that we may rejoice and be glad all our days. Make us glad according to the days wherein thou hast afflicted us, and the years wherein we have seen evil. Let thy work appear unto thy servants, and thy glory unto their children. And let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish thou the work of our hands upon us. Yea, the work of our hands, establish thou, establish thou, establish thou, establish thou, establish thou.
Amen, amen, amen. Today's daily psalm, Psalm 90. So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts to Chokmah, to wisdom. Wisdom is the principal thing. So here we have Psalm 90, Mizmor Tzadai, Mizmor Tzadai, Psalm 90, a tefillah of Moshe, the Ish, the man, Ish ha-Elohim, the man of the true good, the true God. So I'd like to pick up on that right here. It's an interesting psalm, because there's some verses in the psalm that people have misapplied, like the 70, 80 years. It was basically for that wilderness generation, as ones like Moshe and even his brother Aharon lived well past, 70, 80 years, But be that as it may, hopefully touch on that in the psalm right there, here, just a little quick evening psalm. Touch on the evening psalm right here, Shema Yisrael. Psalm, we have Psalm 82. Psalm 82, Shema, just quick, give ear.
My dreadlocks, girl. Can't you see I'm in love with you?
Psalm 82.
מזמור פ"ב, מזמור לאסף.
God standeth in the congregation of the mighty, the mighty, the mighty, the mighty, the mighty, the mighty.
אלוהים ניצב בעדת אל.
He judgeth among the gods, the gods, the gods, the gods, the gods, the gods.
בקרב אלוהים ישפוט.
How long will ye judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? Selah. Defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Deliver the poor and needy. Rid them out of the hand of the wicked. They know not, neither will they understand. They walk on in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are out of course. I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. But ye shall die like men, and fall like one of the princes. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for thou shalt inherit all nations, 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 inherit all nations.
מזמור פ"ב, מזמור לאסף. אלוהים ניצב בעדת אל, בקרב אלוהים ישפוט. עד מתי תשפטו עוול, ופני רשעים תישאו סלע? שפטו דל ויתום, עני ורש הצדיקו. פלטו דל ואביון, מיד רשעים הצילו. לא ידעו ולא יבינו, בחשיכה יתהלכו, ימותו כל מוסדי ארץ. אני אמרתי, אלוהים אתם, ובני עליון כולכם. אכן כאדם תמותון, וכאחד השרים תפולו. קומה אלוהים, שפטה הארץ, כי אתה תנחל בכל הגויים.
Yes, the evening psalm right there, the theme of the Elohim, and also understand the context of Elohim as used in the Hebrew scriptures right there. But here, let's segue right here to this third and the fourth reading right here. Let me see if I can do this right here. Let me see, hold on for a moment. Let me see if can I duplicate this page right here? Yeah, okay, I want to show you something right here for this Torah reading and feeding from the website, but let's see, I'm trying to figure out where okay, use it as a duplication thing right there. Let me just do this right here. Let me copy the page right here. Give me one moment, and boom, we'll come out of that, and Jacob and Esau reconciliation. Yeah, the Jacob and Esau reconciliation, that's interesting. Yeah, that comes up. That comes up in the next Torah reading and feeding right here. You know, the Jacob and Esau reconciliation, where they seem to reconcile, you know, their differences. But here, for this third, here, bring it up on the screen. Here we go. The third reading right here. Pick up with Genesis chapter 29, verse 18. So for this Torah reading and feeding, right, it constitutes Genesis chapter 28 from verse 10. Oh, that was interesting. In Psalm 82, when we went to break down and build on Psalm 82, we looked at the word stand, right? And we brought out the word is not tzab. But also when we just shared the audible concerning Black Jack's, dream, Black Jacob's dream, Yaakov's dream, and the rock stone revelation, that it said how Yahweh, how he stood. And then I noticed when we had brought up the word, it's the same word, natsab, and how natsab, the word to stand, is a different word than say kum. Kum is to stand, but it has a different kind of context, of standing. Like there's a word that means like the opposite of sitting, stand, and there's also to stand for like a solemn purpose, almost like all the generals, stood, like stood in position, like to stand for what I mean? Like to stand, but the Israelites, they stand in the Torah portion, Nitzabim. Nitzabim is one of the ones up in the 50s when they went to ratify the covenant, right? So it's interesting. I just thought about this right here and listening to Psalm 82, and it speaks about how, Elohim, how Nitzab, Nitzab. Now, if it was speaking about many Elohim or like Elohim as so-called gods, it would have been Nitzabim, Nitzabim. When the Israelites, many standing as one, it's Nitzabim, right? But Nitzab is in that singularity. So also we have the same thing in the Torah reading and feeding with Yaakov, Jacob, right? And in his Cholem, right, his dream, right? The dream that he saw, when he rested, on the stone that was for a pillow, the rock stone, therefore the rock stone revelation. Right. So that's interesting as well, meaning that not just that Yahweh was standing opposite of sitting, but it was like standing for a purpose, right? Standing for, like in Psalm 82, is to judge those who have how can I say, those the corrupt judges, because the judges are those who are called the gods in the context of the psalm. It's the corrupt judges of Yisrael. They have a duty, they have like an Elohim like function, over that which is just, righteousness, vindication, judgment, what I mean, life and death, as it were. And that's the whole context when you hear of the psalm. The psalm is almost like an arraignment in a sense. You know what I mean? It's like an arraignment, and then the judgment comes. Yes? So here, when Jacob saw Yahweh Adonai at the top of the ladder standing, right? It's like for a purpose. So in the Hebrew sense, it's a little deeper a meaning, a little more nuanced a meaning than just opposite of sitting, because it's a whole different word that's used. So it's interesting that here in the Psalm 82, shall I go there? Psalm 82, we pick up on Genesis 28. So Genesis 28 is a mirror image, of 82, right? I'm not going to make more out of that, but it's just something that just came to mind. But the connection of the nitzab, the standing, right? The standing. So how are we standing, right? The standing and status, also status. One status is that standing, the stasis, right? So the word has a very interesting context beyond the literal sense of the opposite of sitting. Yes, and therefore even in the Hebrew, there's two different words, right, that are used, but in the English, it just comes out the way it comes out. So here we have this third reading right here, right? So we're going to touch on the third reading, Genesis 29 and 18 to 30 and 13, as well as the fourth reading here, as we're moving into the fourth day, Genesis chapter 30, verses 14 to 27. So this is at the lojs.org site. Let's do this right here. It's at the lojs.org site. You could put into your search lojs.org Torah portion, right? Torah portion, and it should come right up. Give me one moment here. Just want to bring this forward. Okay, yeah. Let me share some of this while we just go through a brief read. Let me see if this is the suitcase. Give me one moment, because we're going to touch on the mothers of Yisrael, right here in this section of our Torah reading and feeding. So here, let's bring this up. A beautiful Russian icon, that goes with like the same artist, no doubt, that did the Abraham, right? The Abraham and Yitzhak, right? The Abraham, because they black Abraham and Isaac. This one here is Yaakov, the scene where Jacob, goes to Luz, which is called Bethel, right? And he has the dream of the ladder, from earth to heaven with the head, the Rosh, right? It's Ras in heaven. And at the top of the ladder, right, stood Yahweh, right? And then when Yeshua also mentions about, like greater things than this, you'll see like angels descending upon the Son of Man, ascending and descending, right? And right there. Okay. So here for this third reading, let's just go through some of the notes right here, right? There we go. Now Laban had two daughters. The older was named Leah, and the younger was named Rachel. Rachel. Right? It was named Rachel. Some say Rachel, but it's not a ch. It's a chel. Right? Rachel. Right? In Genesis 29 and 16. So here we pick up the third reading at Genesis 29 and 18. Right? To Genesis 30 and 13. So in the third reading, which will also be on like the on the Shabbat day when we come together, like within the gathering, for all of the 7 readings. This will be the third aliyah. Like one would rise up to read this portion here. So in the third reading, but during the Shavua, we can take the Torah portion into kind of bite-sized portions, to study and zoom in instead of trying to, read all the chapters and understand everything all at one time. That's a bit. In the third reading, Yaakov, right? Jacob loved Rachel, right? So we also have the idea of a love story, loved Rachel, and responding to Laban's increase. That's what we had left off from the second reading, where Laban, you say his father-in-law, he's not his father-in-law just yet, but it's on the way. Remember, Jacob is working for it. He's working for the marriage. Like at least this is what his intention is, right? Responding to Laban's inquiry in verse 15 from the previous Torah portion, right? So here we have, verse 29. Right here we have 29 and 16 on the screen. Right. So in responding, he offered to serve Laban or Laban, as some say, but Laban 7 years for Rachel's hand. To that, Laban agreed. He said, like, yeah, you're my. What he says? He says, should you work for me for free? Just for continuity purposes. Right. Let's go over here for continuity purposes. Verse was that verse. Boom, 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 boom. Yes, verse 15, right? So right here, verse 15, and Laban, which means white. Laban means white. Laban, right? From, let's see, right here, from Laban, white, as an adjective. And here we have Laban, the verb, to be white or to make something white, right? Like in a sense, like garments, for example, to purify. Nobody want any, dungy t-shirts or, what I mean? Like you want a nice, tidy whitey. So to make it white, to show whiteness, right? In the sense of purified, when speaking about, for example, garments, the white linen garments, right? But also in the secondary sense, when we get into Mitzrayim, the white walls, right? They say the White House today, they say White Hall, right? But in ancient Egypt, they say white walls. Look at that. You got the White House, right? The White House said, the house didn't say nothing, but we still say White House said, like Pharaoh said, so the white walls, and then we have White Hall over in the UK. But the ancient sense of this, when we get into Exodus, is making bricks. And it's very interesting because when we look at the inner meaning of the Hebrew, right, the connection of white making bricks, and then in ancient Mitzrayim, right, they had their like official area. One of the names in translation was like the white walls. So, where they use this white brick. I'm sure it probably looked very beautiful. Can you imagine like the limestone reflecting and that kind of look? But this is what the Israelites and the Hebrews, were forced to make make bricks. Right? Think about it even today among the lost found, amongst I and I, amongst us, we say like, get a brick, the brick, how brick is used almost like bread, how bread is used. Literally it's bread, but then bread can be currency, bread can be money. Same thing with like a brick, right? But here to be white. So it's not always racially. You see what I'm saying? You know what I mean? It's not always racially. Right now, of course, the 400 years and the residue, right, and the continued corruption, sometimes causes confusion. But if we study to show self-approved in the Holy Spirit, mind of Abba Father, Bashem Yeshua, guide us into truth. So it can mean to become white, to make something white, or to make brick, right? To make brick, right, or to make something white. Like if one is cleaning, garments that are supposed to be white but have gotten soiled or dirty. You know what I'm saying? So we have that idea. So Laban, evil Uncle Whitey. So one can understand why we call him evil Uncle Whitey. Is there a racial aspect? It's interpretive, right? But just the plain, right? The plain truth is Laban is son of Bethuel, brother of Rivkah, father of Leah and Rachel, right? It's a noun, proper name. And then there was one of the encampments of the Israelites, one of the 42 spots that the Hebrews and the Israelites encamped at was named Laban, right? Laban, right? So Laban. So here Laban, Jacob's uncle, said to Yaakov, right, his nephew, even though in the language they kind of call each other like brother in that sense. Laban says, "You're my brother," yeah, because Jacob is a son of Laban's sister. He says, "Because thou art my brother," you see what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Because you are my achi, right? You're achi, right? Shouldest thou therefore serve me for naught? Now notice the term abad basically means to serve. It's like an employee. Now, of course, service can be, you can have a good master or a bad master. You can have a good boss or a bad boss. People get kind of screwy with this, and they often like BDB. I think they're going to go through it. Okay, no, BDB didn't do this with the verb, but BDB does it with the noun, right? They'll say slave, servant, right? And yes, we find that offensive. I find it offensive because that means, you see what happens in society after a while when things go outside of truth and logic, right? It becomes irrational, right? Things becomes crazy, right? Here, this word basically means to work or to serve, right? Now, different type of employments, right? Of course, is different. You know what I mean? You might have had a good boss. Oh, what about yourself? You have a business, right? And you have somebody who work for you. They're not your slave. Neither should you treat them as a slave, right? Because of what we went through, right? If Father permits, right? Others should not. But if he permits, so be, right? But the word here, abad, means to work, to serve, right? To labor, to work for another, to serve another by labor, right? To serve as subjects, as we are servants of the King, right? To serve Elohim, right? To serve the Levitical service is called the aboda, right? Modern Hebrew will say avoda, aboda, right? The aboda, the service. So just to understand that right there in its basic sense, to serve. It's interesting. I gotta remember this when we okay. In a causative sense, it says to enslave. No, that's like a bond servant. So biblically, that's a bond servant. Like we fight against another people or whatnot, and we beat them, and they basically submit, So we force them to maybe labor for a while. Ancient peoples did this all the time. It wasn't dehumanizing as has happened to the once lost now found, right? And even other peoples. Because if it happens to one, it will happen to many. Because thou, my brother, because thou art my brother, right? Shouldest thou serve me for nothing? Interesting, he says that right here. The word nothing is chinam, freely. Like they say gratis, right? Gratis, for nothing, right? For no cost, right? Tell me, what shall thy wages be? So here the word for wage, right? Wages, maskoret, the maskoret, wages, right? The reward, right? Notice how we think of the word reward. We think of reward like you didn't do nothing for it and you got a reward, right? But in the language, reward is like you did something and the result of that is your reward, so to speak, the wages, the reward of sin. That'd be a good one, right? The reward of sin, right, is death, right? But here the word wages, maskoret, come from sakar, to hire. One of the tribes, one of the sons of Israel, you know which one? Yissaskar, 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 right? They say Isachar, but really Yissaskar, right? Sakar, right? To hire. And if you remember that whole incident, in fact, that's what we're about to get into right here. Just wanted for continuity purposes. So here's what it says: Laban had two daughters, right? He had two daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah was tender-eyed, but Rachel was beautiful and well-favored. She had Yafat Toar, right? Yafat Toar and Yafat Mareh, right? She had a beautiful figure, Yafat Toar, and she had a Yafata Ma'eh, right? Yafata Ma'eh. She had like a beautiful appearance, how she looked, right? So right here we're gonna pick up right here, right? Just to get into this right here. So Jacob, right? Jacob loved Rachel, right? And said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, thy younger, right? Thy younger daughter. So he states his terms and conditions, so to speak. So Laban agreed, and Yaakov served the years. Now, here also we talk about how the years, right, refer to the week, right? The years referring to a week, right? Like 7 years, that'd be like a week of years. And also how the Ethiopic Book of Jubilees also counts time within that same context. That seems to be a little glimpse. We get like a little glimpse here in Torah, although when it uses week, it often uses it, except prophetically. In prophetic terms, the week can become like the Jubilees calendar. So we see this kind of ancient kind of calendar right here, and we need to, where it says they shall seek to change times and laws. So we need to understand these times and laws that are here in the Torah. So Yaakov served the years, but his love for Rachel, the scripture says, made them seem like just a few days. So Jacob asked Laban for his wife, and Laban made a feast and invited all the men, right? All the men of the place, right? In the evening time, in the Erev, in the evening, Laban, he brought Leah to Yaakov, and Yaakov, he slept with her. He consummated the relationship, right? Yeah. After that consummation night, he probably really slept like in a dream. And then he woke up, and found out that wait, you not, no, you're not Rachel, right? So Laban gave Leah, as well, the scripture points out. Also, let me just point this out right here. There's the blessing for children. Just to pause it right here, because these Torah portions kind of brings out the point of reference for these ancient Judaic, and Hebraic blessings right here. Like for boys, Yisimcha Elohim ka Ephraim, right? With Manasseh, right? May Elohim, the Creator, make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. And then we have the blessings for like girls, for daughters. Yisamech, Yisamech Elohim, Kusara, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, right? May Elohim, the Creator, make you like Sarah, right? Kasara, Rivka, Rebecca, Rachel, Rachel, Leah, and Leah. So there's the blessing for like sons and the blessing for daughters. So we have Jacob is kind of connected with both of the blessing for the children, right? As he's a patriarch, that we get to see like a full within the Torah, of his blessings for the children. So there's a blessing for the boys that actually comes up from Joseph's sons, Yisimcha Elohim, Yisimcha Elohim, Ka Ephraim, Ka Manasseh. May Elohim make you like Ephraim, Ka Manasseh, Manasseh, right? And for girls, right? Yisamech, or Yisamech, Elohim, Ka Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. May Elohim make you like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. So even we should study the matriarchs and patriarchs, because they kind of become types, and even we can see certain interesting things within their persona and personalities. But be that as it be, Laban, after giving Jacob, the elder sister, right, also gave to Leah Zilpah to be her handmaid. Now, in the morning, Yaakov, he got up, wake up, Jacob, wake up, Jacob. So Jacob woke up. He discovered that it was Leah, and he complained to Laban that he had served instead for Rachel. Like then we're very clear about this, wasn't we? You know, right? He had served, you know, for Rachel. So Laban, right, uncle, right, he replied that in that place, he's like, yo, brother, or nephew, in that place, the place that they would, Laban's hometown, his hood, right? They did not give the younger before the firstborn. However, if Jacob fulfilled Leah's week, right? So this is where we get the 7 years, right, being considered a week, as we have in the calculation, the time code of Metzafik Kufale, the Ethiopic Book of Jubilees, that if Jacob fulfilled Leah's week, he would give Yaakov both daughters, right, in exchange for another 7 years of service, another 7 years of aboda, right, right? So Yaakov had to do another 7 years of aboda, right? Of abad, serving. So Yaakov, right? Jacob did so, right? Jacob did so. And Laban, kept keeping his quote word, gave him Rachel to be his Isha, right? To be his woman, to be his wife, and gave Rachel Bilhah, right? To be her handmaid. Now Yaakov loved Rachel, the scripture tells us, more than Leah. So Elohim allowed Leah, the unloved, right, to conceive seed. But Rachel, right, appeared to be barren. Right. So the eyes. Remember, said that Leah was tender-eyed. That didn't stop anything. The eyes have it, right? The eyes have it. Right. So Leah bore a son and called him Reuben. Reuben. Now notice she's a tender-eyed one. Now she calls her son Reuben, right? But in the Hebrew, Reu, like see y'all, Ben, see y'all a son, see y'all a son, see y'all, Ben, see y'all, look, Ben. See a Ben, a son, saying that Elohim have looked upon her affliction. The eyes have it, have looked upon her affliction. So she bore, right, a second son. See, the eyes have it, right? She bore a second son and called his name Shimon, right? Or Simeon, Shimon, right? Hearing. Why Shimon? Hearing, right? Because Elohim had heard that she was hated. All right. Interesting. Isn't it interesting here? She bore a third son, right? And called him Lewi, or modern Hebrew Levi. They'll say Levi, but ancient point Lewi from Lawa to join, Lewi to join, right? And what did Leah say, right? She said that this time, right, her husband would be joined to her. So we can even see within the names of the children, right? Within the names of the children reflect, right, the matriarch's experience. The eyes have it. So we have Reuben, Elohim have looked upon the affliction. Second son, Shimon, hearing, because Elohim have heard, right, that she was hated. The third son, Lewi, saying this time her husband would be Lawa, right? Lewi, joined to her. So she bore a fourth son, right? Didn't stop, right? A fourth son, and called him Yehuda. Not Yahuda, I got to tell you, but Yehuda, saying this time she, Odeh, La Yahweh, she would praise Yahweh. So she called him praised. She called him Yehuda, right? Praise, celebrated, Yehuda. Remember, even Jacob later on will say Judah, right? Bringing out a play on his name. You are he who your brethren shall praise, Yehuda, right? Because she said, I will praise. So Rachel, remember the eyes have it, Rachel envied her sister, and demanded that Yaakov give her children. She demanded, she said, "Give me children or else I die." Right? I die. Right? Give me children, right? So she demanded Jacob give her children, give her sons. But Jacob, he grew angry. Right? Jacob grew angry with her about that, right? And he asked her whether he was in Elohim's stead. Whether it was him, right, instead of Elohim, like whether he was in Elohim's stead, who had withheld sons, right, banim, right, sons specifically, but generally children from her. Rachel told Jacob, right, to sleep with her handmaid Bilhah. Somehow, Rachel, one of our mothers, she's interesting. It's interesting, the narrative, but let's just go through this here just to get an overview. So Rachel told Yaakov to sleep, with her handmaid Bilhah, so that Bilhah might bear sons up on Rachel's knees, who might be credited to Rachel, right? And Yaakov, he did so, right? Now it's interesting because this whole surrogate kind of mothership on a certain level is kind of an interesting idea, because we have something similar with the matriarch Sarah, right, concerning Hagar, right? And here we have Rachel, right, suggesting the same suggestion, and Yaakov, he did it. And Bilhah bore Yaakov a son, a ben, right? And Rachel, right, part of the ancient surrogate, this ancient surrogate process. She is the one. So Bilhah actually bore the child, but Rachel called his name Dan, right? Dan, right? Saying that Elohim had judged her, right? And also heard her voice. So Dan is to judge, but Dan is has executed the sentence of judgment, right? And therefore, because of that, like it's almost like to say I have been, the courts have ruled in my favor, right? And Bilhah bore Yaakov a second son, right? And Rachel called him, the second son, Naphtali, right? Saying that she had wrestled with her sister and prevailed. Now, when Leah, right, when she saw that she had stopped bearing, right, she gave Yaakov her handmaid, Zilpah, to be a Isha. This is interesting. Right here. All right. He gave her Zilpah, right? So Zilpah, right, bore Yaakov a son, right? And Leah called him God, right? God. Some say Gad, but that's a Gentile vowel. God, right? Called it God, saying that not a Gentile vowel, but that's not the way that the A is not a ga, ah. It is it's e, it's u, it's ah, it's a, it's I, or it's o. This is God, God, saying that fortune, right, had come, or really she says like a troop, because God mean troop, right? Like a dad, like to kind of like almost like the mob in a sense. It's kind of interesting. It's like the mob, like as a troop, yeah, right. But Zilpah, she bore Yaakov a second son, right? And Leah, right? And Leah called him Asher, right? Saying that she was Asher, right? She was happy, right? Asher. So we have Asher with the word for happy, Asher. The daughters would call her happy, right? So the third reading basically ends there, right? So we get this back and forth between Leah and Rachel and Leah. But it's kind of interesting because the narrative says something. It says this love. Remember I said on the previous podcast, like search through, especially like Genesis. and look for, like, search like love, right? Search love, and try to read around those areas. It's kind of interesting because it seemed like, when the narrative brings out like he loved her more. Mm. You know what I'm saying? And then also with Isaac, it says Isaac loved, Esau, right? Because he had game in his mouth, the venison, the food, the hunt. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of interesting, the use of love in the scripture. Yeah. But anyway, the fourth reading, right? Let's touch on the fourth reading, Genesis chapter 30, verses 14 to 27, if we can get to. In the fourth reading, Reuben found some mandrakes and brought them to Leah, right? Rachel, remember, Reuben is Leah and Jacob's like the firstborn, yeah? So found some mandrakes and brought them to Leah. And Rachel asked Leah for the mandrakes. And when Leah resisted, Rachel, she agreed. Rachel agreed, right? Rachel agreed that Yaakov, right, that Jacob would sleep with Leah that night in exchange for the mandrakes. Whoa, wow. Sister, you know? And so what happened? Well, when Jacob, when he came home that evening, Leah told him that he had to sleep with her because she had hired him with mandrakes. Uh. So the wives, Leah, Rachel, Leah, they make this, agreement, because remember, Rachel, she wanted the mandrakes that, Leah, her sister's firstborn son, had gotten, right? And so Rachel says, okay, hey, let me have these mandrakes, and you know what? Tonight, and there's no protestation. Now, Jacob comes in from the field, and Leah tells him this, and he did, right? So Elohim heeded to Leah. Elohim heeded to Leah, and she conceived. And boy, it's kind of interesting because how the scripture reads, right? So even though these transactions are going on, right? Here, the narrator is letting us know that Elohim had heeded. That means Leah asked something, right? And then she conceived. Remember, it was past her time. Hmm? She saw that she had stopped, giving birth. And so she, did what her sister did. But this time now, Elohim heeds Leah, right? And she conceived and bore Yaakov a fifth son. It's almost like, in a sense, like Leah, after she stopped, bearing children, she had to almost like get permission. It's kind of interesting, the dynamics of their relationship. Yeah, right. So the fifth son is born. She bore Yaakov a fifth son and called him Yissachar. Right? Remember we talked on Sakar, right? And when Laban asked Jacob what his um maskoret would be, and maskoret is like wages, coming from the word to hire, sakar, right? Yissachar, right? Saying that Elohim, right, had given her a reward. Mm-hmm. Or in the translation, some translation had given her hire, right? Because of her sons. You remember the sons mandrakes. You remember the whole thing with Rachel, right? So Leah bore Yaakov a sixth son. Leah said, "You got my son's mandrakes, you know what I mean? So I can, go about this at will. You got that. I got this, right?" So Leah bore Yaakov a sixth son and called him Zebulun. Zebulun, because Zebul, right, can mean like to dwell or like to give a dowry, saying that Elohim had endowed her with a good dowry, right, a good dowry. And after that, right, Leah bore a daughter and called her name Dinah, right? Elohim heeded Rachel, right, and she conceived, right, and bore a son. So also Elohim heeded to Rachel, right? Now Rachel now gives birth directly and not through the ancient surrogacy, so to speak, right? So Elohim heeded Rachel, and she conceives and bore a son and called him Yosef, called him Yosef, invoking that Elohim to add, because Yosef come from Yasaf, to do again, to repeat, to do again, or to increase, to add. It has a sense of to add, Yasaf, right? To add another son. Interesting that when Elohim heeded Rachel, she took that opportunity, of course, right, to bring forth Yosef, but to name him Yosef, almost like on condition that a future one, right, to be born. Yeah. So then Yaakov, it's at that time that Jacob, he asked Laban to allow him his wives, right, his wives and his children and his children, his sons, his children, right, to return to his own country, right? Laban conceded and blessed him for Jacob's sake, right? Blessed him for Jacob's sake, right? And the fourth reading ends right there. But it's not over. You think like at that episode, the episode ending there, you think, okay, so that's all over. You know what I mean? He's on his way, not just yet, right? Because Laban says something. I don't know if it's in this Torah reading and feeding, but he says something. He says that he had learned by experience, right, that Yahweh had blessed him, blessed Laban because of Jacob. Like we said, Jacob, it brings out the sense that he was good at husbandry, with the animals, you know what I mean? And cause, his his uncle's his uncle's cattle and sheep to increase. All right. So right here, Shema Yisrael. Let's just touch on this right here. Whoa. Here we go. Shema Yisrael. Hear this.
בדרך ושכבקוב קומך וכתבת מאוד על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
Know of a surety that thy seed will be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and they shall enslave and oppress them for 400 years. In the fourth and in the last generation, yes, you shall journey into captivity a second time in ships, because you have rejected his instructions.
שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד.
Hear, Shema Yisrael, hear, give ear, here for the Shalishi, here for the third Aliyah, the third reading, the third up offering here for this Shabbat Wayyetzei, Sabbath, and he went out, and he went forward. Here picking up the first book of Moshe, the Hebrew book called Genesis, here, Genesis chapter 29, here at the 18th verse, for the Shalishi. Wayahab Yaakov eta Rachel. Wayomer Badika Shaba Shani Bi Rachel Biteka Hakitana haketana. And Yaakov and Jacob love Rachel. Wayahab Yaakov eta Rachel. And Jacob loved Rachel and said, Wayomer, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, for Rachel, thy younger daughter. Ebadika Shava Shanim Rachel Bitika Haketana, for Rachel, thy younger daughter. Rachel Bitika Haketana. And Laban said, it is better that I give her to thee than that I should give her to another man. Abide with I. And Yaakov and Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, for Rachel. And they seemed to him but a few days for the love he had to her. And Yaakov and Jacob said to Laban, to Laban, give my wife, my Isha, and Wayomer Yaakov illa Laban. And Yaakov, Jacob said to Laban, to Laban, Hava eta ishti, give my wife, my ishti, my esheti, ishti, oseti, give me my oset, my ishti, give me my wife. Haba eta ishti, give my wife, ishti, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go in to her. Hava eta ishti, kia malua yamai, with aboa. And Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. And it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah, his daughter, and brought her to him. And he went in to her. And Laban gave to his daughter Leah Zilpah, his maid, for an handmaid. And it came to pass that in the morning in the book, behold, it Leah. And he said to Laban, to Laban, what is this thou hast done? What is this thou hast done to me? Ma zota asita li. What is this thou hast done to me? Did not I serve with thee for Rachel, for Rachel? Wherefore then hast thou beguiled me? Ma zota asita li. Hallo, de Rachel abadtia imak with Lama remitani. Wherefore then hast thou beguiled me with Lama remitani? And Laban said, it must not be so done in our country, to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her week, and I and I will give thee this also for the service which thou shalt serve with me, with I, yet 7 other years. And Yaakov and Jacob did so, and fulfilled her week. And he gave him Rachel, his daughter, to Isha also, to wife also. And Laban gave to Rachel, his daughter Bilhah, his maid, to be her maid. And he went in also to Rachel, and he loved also Rachel more than Leah, and served with him yet 7 other years. And when Jehovah saw that Leah hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel, barren. And Leah conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Reuben. And she called her name Watikra Shemo Reuben, Ki Amra Ki Ai Wa Be Anyi Ki Ata Ye Habani Ishi. And she called his name Reuben, for she said, surely Jehovah hath looked upon I affliction. Watikra Shemo Reuben Ki Amra Ki Ai Wa Be Anyi. Now, therefore, my husband will love me. Ki ata ye habani he she, and she conceived again, and bare a son, and said, because Jehovah hath heard that I was hated, he hath therefore given I this son also. And she called his name Simeon. Wa tahara oda, wa teleda bain, wa tomer ki shamahi hoa, ki sinua anoki, wa ya yitena li gam etze, wa tikra shimo Shimon. And she conceived again, and bare a son, and said, now, this time, this I will my husband be joined to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore was his name Shimon, called Levi. Therefore was his name called Lewi. Wa tahara oda, wa teleda bain, wa tomer ata, ha pa'ama, Yilaweh, Ata hapa'ama, Yilaweh Yishia Elayakia, Yaladiti Yaloa, Losha Bani, Alkin, Arashmo Lewi. Therefore was his name called Lewi, Levi. And she conceived again, Watahar Od, and bare a son, Wateled Bain. And she said, Watomer, now will I praise Jehovah. Therefore she called his name Judah, and left bearing. Hapa'am Odeh Eti Hoa Alkain Ara Shemo Yehuda Wa Ta Emod Mia Ledet. Now will I praise the Lord, Yahuwah, Hapa'am, Odeh, Eti Hoa. Therefore all came. She called his name, Tara'ah Shemo, Judah, Yehuda, and left bearing. Wata Emoda, Mia Ledet. And here, Shema Yisrael, here, give here, Yisrael, first book of Moshe, Hebrew book, called Genesis chapter 30. And when Rachel saw that she bare Yaakov no children, Rachel envied her sister, and said to Yaakov, give me children, or else I die. Watere Rachel ki Eloah yalda li Yaakov. Watek ane Rachel ba'echotaha. Watomer el Yaakov. And she said to Jacob, Habali banim withim hayin metahanoki. And Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel. And he said, I in Elohim's stead? Am I in Elohim's stead? The true God's stead? Who has withheld from thee, the fruit of the womb? Why yichar af Yaakov? And Jacob's anger, Rachel, was kindled against Rachel. Why Yomer? And he said, Hitachata Elohim Anoki. Am I in Elohim's stead? Hitachata Elohim Anoki. Asher Mana'a Miyamecha Pri. Who has withheld from thee the fruit of the womb? And she said, behold, look, see, my maid Bilhah, go into her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her. And she gave him Bilhah, her handmaid, to Isha, to Eshet, to wife, to woman. And Yaakov and Jacob went in to her. And Bilhah conceived, and bare Yaakov, and bare Jacob a son. And Rachel said, Elohim
hath judged me, judged I, and have also heard my voice, and have given I a son. Therefore called she his name Dan. Watomer Rachel, Danani Elohim. Elohim has judged I. He judged. Elohim judged I. Danani Elohim. With Dama Shama, Bit Oli. Why Yitain Ali, Bain, all came. Ara Shemo Dan. Therefore called she his name Dan. And Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived again, and bare Yaakov, bare Jacob a second son. And Rachel and Rachel said, with great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed. And she called his name Naphtali. Watomer Rachel, and Rachel said, Naphtulei Elohim. Naphtulei Elohim, with Elohim wrestlings, with mighty wrestlings, with great wrestlings of Elohim. Naphtulei Elohim, Nifataltia Ima Echoti Gam Yakolti. With Elohim wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister Nifatalti Ima Echoti, and have prevailed, and also Gam Yakolti, and have prevailed. Watikra Shemo, and she called his name Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had left bearing, she took Zilpah, her maid, and gave her Yaakov, and gave her Jacob, Leisha, to Isha, Esha, to Orpha, and Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Yaakov, bare Jacob a son. And Leah said, a troop cometh, and she called his name Gad. And Leah said, Watomer Leah, Bagad, fortune, a troop, Bagad. Watikra eta shemo Gad. She said, in a troop, Bagad. Watikra, and she called eta shemo, and she called his name Gad. She called his name Gad. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Yaakov, bare Jacob a second son. And Leah said, happy am I, for the daughters will call I blessed. And she called his name Asher. Wateleda Zilpah, Shifchat Leah, Bein Sheni, Le Yaakov. And Zilpah, Leah's handmaid, bore Yaakov a second son. Watomer Leah, and Leah said, Be'ashri, happy am I. Be'ashri, happy am I. Kia isharuni benota. For the daughters will call I happy. Ki isharuni banot. And happy I am, saying of me, I'm happy, banot, the daughters will call me happy. Watikra et shemo Asher, and called his name Asher, and called his name Asher. And here, Shema Yisrael, here, for the Revi'i, here for the Revi'i, the fourth Aliyah, the fourth reading, the fourth up-offering, here for this Shabbat Wayyetzei, Sabbath, and he went out, and he went forward. Here, picking up the first book of Moshe, Hebrew book called Genesis chapter 30, here at verse 14, for the Revi'i, here for the fourth Aliyah. Wayeleka Reuven, Biyameya Ketzira Chitim, Waya Yimsa Dudaim, Ba Sadeh, Waya Beya Otama Ella Leia Imo, Watomer Rachela Ella Leia,
Tenina li mia dudae benech. And Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest. Wayalecha Reuven bimeya kitzira chitzim. And Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field. Wayimcha duadaim basade, and brought them to his mother Leah. Wayaveya otama illa Leah imo. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Give me, I pray thee, of thy son's mandrakes." Watomer Rachel illa Leah Tnina li mi du dae benech. Tnina li, give to me, mia du dae benech. Give to me, I pray thee. Tnina li, give to me, I pray thee, of thy son's mandrakes, mia du dae benech. And she said to her, "Is it a small matter that thou hast taken my husband? And wouldest thou take away my son's mandrakes also?" And Rachel said, "Therefore he shall lie with thee tonight for thy son's mandrakes." And Yaakov and Jacob came out of the field in the evening. And Leah went out to meet him and said, "Thou must come in to me. I must come into I, for surely I have hired thee with my son's mandrakes." And he lay with her that night. And Elohim, the true good, the true God, and Elohim hearkened to Leah, and Elohim hearkened to Leah. Wayishma'a Elohim illa Leah. And she conceived, and bare Yaakov, and bare Jacob a fifth son. And Leah said, "Elohim hath given me my hire, because I have given my maiden to my husband." And she called his name Issachar. Watomer Leah, Natana Elohim, Sekaria, Ashara Natatia, Shifachatia, Leishi, Watikra Shemo, Yisakar. And Leah said, "Elohim hath given me my hire. Natan Elohim Sekari, have given me Sekari, have given me my hire, because I have given my maiden to my husband. Asher Natatia Shifachatia Le Ishi, to my man, to my husband." And she called his name Yisakar. Watikra Shemo Yisachar. And Leah conceived again, and bare Yaakov, and bare Jacob a sixth son. And Leah said, "Elohim hath endued me with a good dowry. Now will my husband Ishi dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons." And she called his name Zebulun. Watahar o Dalea, Wateleda Beina Shishia Le Yaakov. And Leah conceived again and bore Shishi, Bain Shishi, a 6th son, Le Yaakov. Watomer Leah, Zebadani Elohim. He dwelt, Elohim has dwelt me, endowed me with a good dowry. Zebadani Elohim, Otia, Zevedat Ova, Hapa'am, Yizabeleni Ishi, Kia, Yaladia Loa, Shisha Banim, Watikra et Shemo, Zebulun. And she called his name Zebulun. And afterward she bare a daughter, and called her name Dina. With Achar Yalda Bat, Wa Tikra Eta Shemaha Dina. And Elohim remembered Rachel, and Elohim hearkened to her, and opened her womb, her matrix, and she conceived, and bare a son, and said, Elohim have taken away my reproach.
Wa Tomer Asaf Elohim. Gathering together, Elohim have taken away. Asaf Elohim Eta Kharapati. Have gathered together, taken away, gathered together my reproach. Asaf Elohim Eta Kharapati. And she called his name Yosef. Watikra Eta Shemo Yosef. Saying, Yahweh Jehovah, saying, Jehovah shall add to me, to I, another son. Lemor Yosef Yahuwah li Bein Acher. Jehovah shall add to me another son. And it came to pass when Rachel had born Joseph, that Yaakov said to Laban, Send I away, that I may go to mine own place and to my country. Give my wives and my children, for whom I have served thee, and let me go, for thou knowest my service, which I have done thee, for the eye knowest my service, which I have done thee. And Laban said to him, I pray thee, if I have found favor in thine eyes, tarry. I have learned by experience that Jehovah hath blessed me for thy sake. I have learned by experience that Jehovah, Waya Barakeni Hoa, Bi Gelaleka. I have learned by experience that Jehovah hath blessed me for your sake, for the eye's 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 sake.
Psalm 90.
תהילים ספר רביעי מזמור צדה, 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 צדה. תפילה למשה איש האלוהים, 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 איש האלוהים. אדוני, 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 אדוני.
Lord, thou hast been our dwelling place in all generations, 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 generations.
אדוני, מעון אתה היית לנו בדור ודור, בדור ודור, בדור ודור, בדור ודור, בדור.
Psalm 90.
תהילים ספר רביעי מזמור צדה, 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 צדה. תפילה למשה איש האלוהים, 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 איש האלוהים. אדוני, 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 אדוני.
Lord, thou hast been our dwelling place in all generations, 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 generations.
אדוני, מעון אתה היית לנו בדור ודור, בדור ודור, בדור ודור, בדור ודור, בדור ודור.
Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever thou hadst formed the earth and the world, and the world, and the world, and the world, and the world.
ומעולם עד עולם, עד עולם, עד עולם, עד עולם, עד עולם, עד עולם.
Even from everlasting to everlasting to everlasting to everlasting to everlasting to thou art God, art God, art God, art God.
אתה אל, 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 אל.
Thou turnest man to destruction, and sayest, Return, ye children of men. For 1,000 years in thy sight are but as yesterday when it is past, and as a watch in the night. Thou carriest them away as with a flood. They are as asleep. In the morning they are like grass which groweth up. In the morning it flourisheth and groweth up. In the evening it is cut down and withereth. For we are consumed by thine anger, and by thy wrath are we troubled. Thou hast set our iniquities before thee, our secret sins in the light of thy countenance. For all our days are passed away in thy wrath. We spend our years as a tale that is told. The days of our years are 60 years and 10. And if by reason of strength they be 80 years, yet is their strength labor and sorrow. For it is soon cut off, and we fly away. Who knoweth the power of thine anger? Even according to thy fear, so is thy wrath. So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. Return, O Lord, how long? And let it repent thee concerning thy servants. O satisfy us early with thy mercy, that we may rejoice and be glad all our days. Make us glad according to the days wherein thou hast afflicted us, and the years wherein we have seen evil. Let thy work appear unto thy servants, and thy glory unto their children. And let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish thou the work of our hands upon us. Yea, the work of our hands, establish thou, establish thou, establish thou, establish thou, establish thou.
Establish thou the work of our hands, the good works of our hands. Yes, here, Mizmor Tzadai. Tzadai, Mizmor Tzadai, Mizmor Tzadai. Psalm 90, the 90th Psalm right here. Here we have like a fragment, a relic from the past. Here we have beginning book 4 in the book of Psalms, beginning book 4 right here. Psalms 90 to Psalm 106, the fourth book of the Psalter, the Sefer Tehillim. Here we have Mizmor Tzadai, speaking to man's brevity, and Elohim, Yahweh Eloheinu's his eternity. Man's brevity, like man's shortness of time, and and Elohim's eternity, right? Also here the life of the Son of Man, man and the Son of Man's temporariness, and Elohim's eternalness. Psalm 90, a prayer of Moshe, taking refuge in the loving kindness, the attribute of Yahweh Eloheinu Chesed, of the Eternal One, under the wrathful judgment of death. Now, here we have the fourth book of the Psalms, the fourth book of the Psalms. So let's get right in it right here. Here's some of the K&D notes. We have some hard copy notes we like to share right here. But the key thing about this psalm right here is that we have in the opening superscription, it reads, Tefillah leMoshe ish haElohim. Tefillah leMoshe. Tefillah, prayer. Tefillah of Moses. LeMoshe, Ish, man, Ha Elohim, the man of the true good, the true God, Ish Ha Elohim. So here, this often some have called this one of the finest psalms, right? One of the finest hymns in the English language. One writer, poet, or scholar of some measure, Isaac Watts, right? And he had a psalm that was inspired, "O God, our help in ages past." This was inspired by Isaac Watts, who called this psalm here, Psalm 90, one of the finest hymns, according to like the King James KJV translation, in the English language. And he did a tune based on this psalm, "O God, our help in ages past." In sublime language, right? Very refined language. And something about this psalm here really does ring with Moshe. Moses, I think we touched on it even when we got into Song of Moses as well. It dwells upon the transitory, changeable character of man, the human being, Adam, and the son of Adam, man and the son of man's existence. However, it's not so much pessimistic, it's looking at, man is here for a short time, but not so much pessimistically. If life is brief, is short, right, the moments should be precious and must not be wasted in vain pursuits. The swift passing of man's moments and his stay upon the earthly plane would render it meaningless and purposeless were it not that Yahweh Eloheinu, Elohim, is eternal, everlasting, ever living, ever faithful, ever sure, and in him is man, the human being's abiding dwelling place. Now, there's something interesting Torah-wise as well. We have attributes of Yahweh Eloheinu. Chesed, loving kindness, is one of them, a significant one. In Exodus chapter 34, when Moshe seeks to know, right, Yahweh. He says, cause me to shew me yourself, cause me to know you. Yahweh reveals what we call the 13 attributes of mercy, right? And then as we understand those attributes of who he be, Yahweh, he who be, well, who he be, through those attributes and also through the testimonies of scriptures, and even more so, in living life, in the life of the King of Kings Christ, just living it out, we should hopefully have testimony of it, So both in the scripts, the revealed revelation of Yahweh, right, the self-revealing Elohim, we have here a prayer of Moses. And it's important that we emphasize that what we have here in Psalm 90 is a prayer of Moshe, right? It's important because then we have to put everything else in context to Moses' time here, right? Based on this psalm, right? So the swift passing of time, but in Elohim is man's dwelling place. You see, so we see the attributes, who he be, right? The merciful, the kind, the judge, the almighty, all the attributes. We can, be here for a moment, but those 13 are the key ones in Exodus chapter 34. One of them is, and it comes out even in the Torah portion with Yaakov, with Jacob, the patriarch Jacob. He said he did not know that Yahweh was in this place. And in Hebrew, we call like a place, to say a place, a spot, like a standing place, literally, but a place is a makom, makom. And this is a little bit of a reasonment, but just to kind of lay a foundation that he who be, who he be, he is the place. As it says that the name, when it says the name of Yahweh, right, is like a refuge, and the righteous run into it. Right? How do we run into the name? Like what I mean? It's a refuge. How can it be a refuge? Right? So he is the dwelling place. He is the dwelling place. He is man's true dwelling place. So the psalm, right, is entitled the prayer of Moses. The proper title is Tefillah le Moshe, right? A tefillah of Moses, right? Let's bring this out here on the screen again, right here. So from some of the notes here we have the fourth book of the Psalms, from Psalm 90 to Psalm 106, right? Corresponds. Remember when Yeshua Robbeinu, our Rabbi Yeshua Hanotri, Justice of Nazareth, he said, is it not written in your law? And he was discoursing, with the teachers, the scholars, the academics of Torah, like the rabbis and the Pharisees. And he says, it's not written in your law. And then he quotes Psalm. Well, why does he call Psalms your law? Right? Because the book of Psalms, right, is one book, but it's 5 parts, like Torah, right? So often we look at, say, the fourth book of Psalms, and we see some correspondences with the Sefer, right? The Sefer Bamidbar, Sefer Bamidbar. The Midbar is the wilderness, and that corresponds to the book of Numbers, as Numbers is the fourth book, right? The Sefer Bamidbar, right? Of the Pentateuch, of the 5 volumes that we call Torah. Pentateuch mean like 5 volumes, right? So the fourth of the 5 volumes, and corresponding here with the fourth book of the Sefer Tehillim, with the book of Psalms. So here it beginning with book 4, right? So when we look at book 4 here, and then we look at the Torah, 5 volumes for the Torah, 5 volumes for the Psalms, and we come to the fourth book, we have a psalm that begins with a tefillah le Moshe Ish HaElohim, a prayer, tefillah of Moshe, right? The Ish HaElohim, that comes out of the midst of the dying off, the dying off of the older generation during the march, during the march through the wilderness that in the Hebrew is known as the Midbar, to the name, right? To the name that could not be allowed to remain so bald, because next to Abraham, right, Moshe is like the greatest man known, like in the Brit Hayashana, was called the Old Testament, right? History of redemption. Is added the title of honor, right, to his name, right? The prayer of Moshe, right? Tefillah le Moshe, Ish Ha-Elohim. So the Hebrew there, the title of honor, Ish Ha-Elohim. And then we find in Deuteronomy, 33, where I said, "Wizot ha-baraka asher baraka Moshe Isha Elohim et b'nei Yisrael lifneya moto." Here we have Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 1, Wizot, and this ha-baraka, and this is the baraka, this is the blessing, asher barak, that he blessed Moshe, that Moshe blessed, right? Asher barak Moshe, Ish Ha-Elohim. So here in Deuteronomy, like we have here in today's daily Psalm, Mizmor Tzadai, Psalm 90, we have this phrase right there that we highlighted, Moshe Ish Ha-Elohim. Who is Moses? Moshe is the Ish. He's the man. Now remember, there's like four words, main words in the Hebrew that often is translated as man. So Ish here means like man of like of authority, man of responsibility, of standing, like a man of standing, within the community, not just a rank and file man, the Adam or the Ben Adam, not the Ben Adam, the Ben Ha-Adam, like the regular son of man, regular human being, but this is like one who has to whom more is given, more is required. Let's put it like that. That term often is used in connection with Ish, right? So to those high and those low. So the Ish should be the high man in society, man of some responsibility. So Moshe is called, right? Not the Adam of Elohim. No, 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 not that. But the Moshe is called the Ish Ha-Elohim. So here, even in Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 1, with the opening of today's daily psalm, so you can see this in the Anglit, see it in the English, Anglit. It says, and this is the Baraka, this is the blessing wherewith Moses, the man of God, blessed the children of Israel, right? Lifnei moto, before his before his death. And here, down here, the Tanakh, Wizot ha-baraka asher barak Moshe ish ha-Elohim eta b'nei Yisrael lifnei moto. Right? So here in Deuteronomy 33 and 1, we have the same as we have here, the title of honor, and then also in Joshua 14 and 6. Right? Joshua 14 and 6. Wayigshu B'nei Yehuda ela Yehoshua ba Gilgal Wayomer Elayo Kalei ben Yefune ha Kenizi Ata Yadaita Eta Hadabar Rasher Diber Yahuwah ela Moshe Isha Elohim al al odotai wa al odoteka bikadesha barnea, bringing out Joshua 14 and 6. So these are areas where it has Moses with the title of honor as Ish Ha-Elohim, as the man of the true good, the true God. Here we go, right here. Here we go. This is the verse that we just read, KJV Light. It says, then the children of Yehuda, the Bnei Yehuda, they came to Yehoshua, Gilgal and Caleb ben Yefuneh, Hag and Nazi, then and Caleb the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite, and they said to him, thou knowest, Ata Yadata, the thing, the word, Hadabar, right? Diber Yahuwah, that Yahuwah said or spoke to Moshe, Ish Ha-Elohim, Moses, the man of Elohim, concerning me and concerning thee in the Kadesh Barnea, in the Kadesh Barnea. So right here, it's interesting because, came to and said to him, thou knowest the thing that Yahweh said to Moshe. Right? Then the children of Judah came to Joshua and Gilgal, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, said to him, okay, yeah, recalling what occurred. So this psalm is the context of Moshe in the wilderness, and it connects with the Bamidbar, the wilderness tribe. An ancient name of the prophets, one of the ancient names of the prophets was also known as prophets, was called like Ish Ha-Elohim, that expresses the close relationship, right? The close relationship and the fellowship, the Chavruta with Elohim. Just as servant of Yahweh. So we have elsewhere was like servant of Jehovah, or even Dawid expresses that I'm like Abdekah, I'm your servant, expresses the relationship of avoda, of service, in accordance with the special office and in relation, right, to the history of redemption. Into that Yahweh has taken the man, and into that he himself has entered, right, the covenant relationship. There is scarcely any written memorial of antiquity that so brilliantly justifies the testimony of tradition concerning its origin as does this psalm. That's an interesting point they just made. There's scarcely any written memorial of antiquity of the past that so brilliantly justifies the testimony of tradition concerning its origin as does this psalm, that may have been preserved in some one or other of the older works, perhaps the book of Jasher, not the stuff that people are running around with today. That's a later rabbinical commentary, but the original that Joshua 10 and 13 and 2 Samuel 1 and 18 speaks about, until the time of the final redaction of the Psalms, when the Psalms in our present form, right, had come down to us, not alone with respect to its content, but also with reference to the form of its language. So even sometimes, like, we'll see a translation and it'll read just like the other psalm, another area. But then when you look at the Hebrew, you see sometimes archaic, you see older kind of expressions, and you can tell even from the type of language that's used in this psalm. And then we study it with other areas of scripture. In some areas it does display different layers, like almost like King James old version, the old English. And if you go older than King James, if you compare King James version to Bede, somebody named Bede is, like, for a lot of us to be hard to read, but it's English. So the same thing we can see with this psalm here. The form of its language is suitable to Moshe, right? It kind of like it's like Moses, because this is a prayer of Moses. So we take it as a prayer of Moses. Some, may have differences of opinion, but we're not going to go all into that, and not going to go much more into this so much right here. They say these trifling points, so we just scrolled over that because it looked like some trifling points, dwindle down to nothing in comparison with the fact that Psalm 90 bears within itself distinct traces of the same origin as the song, the Ha'azinu, that we have in Deuteronomy 32, and the blessing of Moshe, right, in Deuteronomy 33. In fact, these are our last two, like, Torah reading and feedings, like the 53rd and the 54th. Ha'azinu, Deuteronomy 32, and Wizot HaBaraka, and this is the blessing in Deuteronomy 33. And also the discourses that we have in Deuteronomy, and in general, the directly Mosaic portions, the areas of the scripts that we can say directly are Mosaic within the Torah, the 5 books, right? Also, the book of the covenant, right? Like within the Torah, there's a section that's the book of the covenant. They don't stop it and like put a big sign up there, but there are other, I can say, we just look at this, okay, Deuteronomy, Genesis, but in there are sometimes ancient fragments from other books or other narratives, like the generations of Adam, the generations of this. These are books, generations. The people had to live for an amount of time before one could compile those generations. Check, right? So that we have the book of the covenant together with the Decalogue, right? So the book of the covenant picks up with like Exodus chapter 19, and then the Decalogue, the 10 words, falsely called the 10 commandments, is in the next chapter, Exodus chapter 20, and Deuteronomy, with exception of its supplement. There are parts in Deuteronomy, like people say, well, how did Moses write about his death? You know what I mean? Well, those are supplements, because remember, things were passed into the hands of Yehoshua, right, as well as the Levites, who were the custodians of the scrolls and the scripts, are regarded by us on very good grounds as the largest originally Mosaic constituent parts of the Pentateuch. The book of Deuteronomy it says, Torat Moshe in its preeminence. So the words there is a Torah of Moses. Because remember, Deuteronomy basically is Moses giving his, like, kind of like a farewell address, but in that farewell address, he's like narrating to the children of the Exodus generation that came out but did not go into the promised land, but wandered to death in the wilderness. Now he is giving instruction to their children, with the hope, of course, that they would do better than their fathers. All right. So hopefully all of this kind of helps to put this psalm into its true context. Because what's the context of this particular psalm right here? In addition to it being a prayer of the man of Elohim, Moshe, the man of Elohim, right? The psalm is entitled A Prayer of Moses, right? As we mentioned, the similarity of thought and language to Deuteronomy chapter 33 is very noticeable, both in the translation, but even more so Hebraically, right? It's almost like somebody who writes in a certain way and articulates, and then you see something over here, you'd be like, wow, something else they're saying. You can recognize the sayer by the way they use language, right? So we see that as well with Deuteronomy 33, right? Some commentators, right, they defend the traditional authorship. The traditional authorship, as we have here, is a prayer of Moshe, right? the man of Elohim. The characteristic Mosaic tone is a particular tone, right, that's used, is regarded, right, in regarding the wages of sin as death. So even in this psalm is the basic principle that we have even in the Brit Chadasha of the wages or rewards of sin, right? The massive simplicity. So also we have to note the simplicity, right, of articulating certain points, the simplicity and the entire absence of dependence on other parts of the psalter. Sometimes we can tell that certain psalms were like original Davidic psalms, and we can see, well, this psalm is a later psalm, but it borrowed generously from the earlier Davidic psalms. But the thing about this psalm, it does not, you say have dependence on any other part of the psalter. It's kind of unique in its language here. It's like a book of praises and prayers were compiled in songs. This is what the book of Psalms is, and this is a good example, right here, right? And this separates this psalm from almost all the other, right, psalms of the fourth book. So even in this fourth book, from Psalm 90 to Psalm 106, this psalm, it stands out when you study it as being unique in the fourth book. So all of that is strongly favorable to the correctness of the superscription. Tefillah leMoshe ish Elohim, a prayer of Moses, the man of the true good, the true God, right, of Elohim, right? That separate this psalm from the other psalms of the fourth book, right, based on the superscription. Furthermore, when we look at the section of verses, namely verses 7 to 12, right? Verses 7 to 12 is distinctly historical, right? Is distinctly historical and is best understood as referring not to humanity in general, not to like human beings in general, but to Yisrael and to the Beta Israelites, right, in particular. Right now, those verses, take note, verses 7 to 12, right? 7 to 12, where it says, the days of our years, 80 years and 10, by reason of strength, 80. Like people say, well, there it says our days are 70 years, or if we're really strong, the 80 years. But this is a historical part in the prayer of Moshe. And this is reflecting what Moses was witnessing in those 40 years when the Exodus generation were dying off in the wilderness and their children were, you could say, coming up, growing up. Right? So that's a historical aspect there that does not refer to mankind, even though in a lot of churches and a lot of people have taken it religiously to say, well, like if you're 69, I'm almost 70, and it's a whole psychology because of misunderstanding and because of these things not being, taught correctly or being misconstrued. So verses 7 to 12 in Psalm 90, where it speaks about 70 and 80 years, was not putting a stamp on all humanity that you only have 70 or 80 years. That's not what it's saying. It was saying to the generation that came out of Mizraim and were found unworthy to enter into the land, that basically had to dig graves for themselves, as we say. They had to dig graves for themselves in the wilderness. So no period, right, is so likely to have suggested such a state of mind, a state of thought, a strain of thought, right, as when the penalty of sin, right, especially the Israelites in the wilderness, right, was laid upon the people. Remember the Israelites in the wilderness, and they were condemned to find and to dig graves for themselves in the Midbar. And the Midbar is the wilderness. So here to this fourth book, right, of the Psalms, a prayer of Moshe, right, Tefillah LeMoshe, right, Ish Ha Elohim, the man of Elohim. So here, let's get right in it right here, right? Touch on some of these highlights right here. Today's daily Psalm, Psalm 90, opening the fourth book of the Psalms, right? And like the fourth book of Torah, right? We have in the wilderness, and here opening the fourth book of the Psalms right here with Psalm 90. We have a prayer of Moses, and this here reflects, right, the experiences, especially the wilderness tribe of Yisrael. So we have verses 1 to 6, speaking of Elohim, him being immortal, his immortality and man's mortality, the contrast, right, between God and man. Elohim being immortal and man being mortal, verses 1 to 6. Verses 7 to 12 that we mentioned, the effect of divine wrath. What was the effect of divine wrath on the Israelites in the wilderness? It was that judgment, condemnation. They had to wander. They would have probably got a swift judgment, but Moshe plea bargained, and they basically, wandered for 40 years and had to dig graves for themselves. This was the effect of the divine wrath and the judgment. In other words, this is a classic example of the wages of sin is death. What happened to the Israelites? No, he brought them out of Mizraim, right? But he did not bring them in, right, to the land, right? The effect of the divine wrath, the wages of sin. They had to, proverbially speaking, pay for it. Verses 13, right, to 17, three major parts of today's daily psalm. The prayer, the tefillah for return, for the return of Yahweh, a return of Elohim's favor, the return of his graciousness, right? The return of his favor and the return of his graciousness, right? Moshe, remember how Moshe always would plea bargain, right? Plea bargain for the Israelites, turned away Yahweh's wrath, right, from the children of Israel many times. And here in the Psalm, with Psalm 90, we have a kind of example, as we do also in the Torah, an example, So right here, let's get into it. So here, prayer of Moses, of Moshe, the man of God. He says Adonai, right? The superscription is a prayer of Moses, the man of God, right? Prayer of Moses, man of God. Superscription, first proper verse, Adonai. Thou hast been our dwelling place in all generations. Interesting language here. Thou hast been our dwelling place. Tefillah leMoshe, Ish Elohim, Adonai, Ma'on, Ata Hayita Lanu, Bedor Wador, right? Adonai, oh Lord, Lord of his mercy. Right, let's bring it out. Let's bring it out right here so we can compare scripts right here. So here at the Aleph verse, including the superscription, a prayer of Moshe, right? Here. It's interesting here. Here some try to put in, they say put Yahweh, but actually Adonai would be more proper, even like in the context. Sometimes it's good to fall on the mercy of the court than to try to call the judge by name, right? Seeing that the name, the Yahweh is the covenant name. So you break covenant and then you dare even utter the name. Remember it says calling the name in vain. So even when Moshe prayed, in many instances, he would fall on the mercy, Lord of mercy, by saying Adonai, right? So here we have right here, opening verse, Adonai, Adonai, Ma'on, Ata Hayita Lanu, Adonai, Ma'on, Ata, Ma'on, refuge or dwelling place, Ma'on, Ata, you male, right? Ata, you male, have become, here we go, Ma'on, two forms of it in Hebrew. Elsewhere we might find Ma'in, but here it's Ma'on, right? Ma'on is like a dwelling place, a habitation, a refuge, like a lair, animal lair, a dwelling place, right? Here we have Ma'on, right? Ma'on coming from Onna. Onna mean cohabitation. Onna, like a man and a woman, like cohabitating. Onna, right? Conjugal rights. Onna, right? You have the sense of Onna, right? The root sense, the ancient Afro-Shemitic root sense is like dwelling together, right? Dwelling together, right? Unused root is an old Afro-Shemitic root that, and as the language developed, sometimes the roots are used less often, but they still are there, in the background, apparently meaning to dwell together, as we have in Ma'on, right? Adonai, Lord of his mercy. Ma'on, Ma'on, dwelling place. Ata, you yourself, to dwell together. Now, yeah, it says cohabitation, even in the sexual sense, the duty of marriage. But you remember that elsewhere in the prophets, right, we learn that even the covenant, right, like a marriage is a covenant, right? And later on to the prophets, Israel, even the man are accused, right, and convicted of being like an unfaithful wife. You know, like a man calling a woman the B word, and now it's like Yahweh through the prophets is saying to the man, y'all are the B word, y'all accused of, look how you broke the covenant, going after other people's Elohim and all this. So the Ma'on here is an abode. He has been our abode, he has been our retreat, he has been our asylum. Yes, he has been. So right here, this is Moses opening, right? First 6 verses right here. Elohim and mortal, man mortal. So we have, as we mentioned already, the Isha Elohim. Moses is so named in Deuteronomy 33 and 1. However, the description is also applied to other prophets. Other prophets are also known as Isha Elohim. He has been our Ma'on, Ma'on. Adonai, Ma'on Ata. He has been our dwelling, our habitation, our shelter from the stormy blast. A classic English tune that was based on the King James translation of this. The eternal God is a dwelling place. Where do we have that? Where is that written? In Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 27. Let's go there for a moment, just at the opening so we can get a good groundation. 33, Deuteronomy 33, 33:27. Here we go. 33:27. Let's get the verse right here. KJV up front. The eternal God, refuge. All right, the italicized words not there. Remember, principal points of order. The italicized words, you could read them, but in the Hebrew, to get the raw, to get the real sense, you know, these italicizations are not found, right? The eternal God, refuge. So more the force of the Hebrews, like the eternal God, refuge. Right? The eternal God, refuge. Right? In other words, he is refuge. Right? And underneath, the everlasting arms. And where underneath? Everlasting, eternal arms. He shall thrust out the enemy before thee and shall say, destroy. The word says destroy them, but in the Hebrew, he just say destroy. We know what he's talking about. You should know what he's talking about. Destroy. Right? Destroy, destroy. Right? Them? No, them. Uckum. Right? Destroy, destroy. Let's get the Hebrew right here. Right? Like in military, commands are simple. Right? Destroy, destroy. You mean destroy them? What kind of soldier are you? Anyway, here it says, Me'ona Elohim Kedem. Me'ona, dwelling place. Me'ona Elohei Kedem. Here we go. Me'ona Elohei Kedem. Elohei Kedem. Right? The Elohim of the Kedem. Right? You say Kedemawi, Kedemawi. But here we have when it says that the everlasting, the eternal, connected with this psalm here, the prayer of Moses, Psalm 90, we have the Kedem. He is the Elohim of the Kedem, right? The Elohim of the Kedem. This is the Hebrew right here. It says the eternal. You see the eternal? We have Kedem. Kedem. How is Kedem eternal? Kedemawi. How is, right, Kedem, right? How is Kedem eternal, right? Oh, chant, don't even have that audible up here, right here. Well, let's go into this right here. So in the Hebrew, right, this also can be seen as an attributional name of Yahweh Eloheinu. What do we mean by attributional name? He who be who he be. Well, who he be, right? Who we seek him to be, right? Who we acknowledge in word, sound, and power him to be, right? Even in, we can say, the present moment, upon the moment of articulation. You're calling on somebody's mercy, then you should identify them as merciful, If you know that they have wrath too, you're not gonna, call them, like, I know you're an angry person, but you're looking for mercy. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? I know you're a merciful person, and your mercy is much more than your anger. You gotta, you know what I'm saying? Right there. So here we go. Right here, I just got it right here. So here we have the Elohei Kedem. This is the first verse of today's Psalm, of Psalm 90, right? Right, the prayer, right, of Moshe, the man of God, the man of Elohim. So here it says, Me'ona Elohei Kedem, Ua mitachata zeroot olam, wa yegaresh mi paneka, oyeb, wa yomer, Hashmade, Wayomer, and he says Hashmade. Hashmade is a command to Shamad. Shamad is to destroy. It's like extermination ord, right? To destroy, to annihilate, right? So notice how this connects with our psalm here. Psalm 90, Mizmor Tzadai, right? Adonai, thou hast been our dwelling place in all generations. Adonai Ma'on Ata Hayita Lanu Bedor Wador. And here, compared to Moshe in Psalm 33, well, when I say Psalm 33, Moses in Deuteronomy 33, but it is a song, remember the song of Moses? He says Me'ona. So we have Me'ona, Elohei Kedem, the Elohim of the Kedem, the eternal Elohim. Here we go, right here, Kedem, Elohei Kedem.
Kadamawi.
Kedem.
Selassie.
Elohei Kedem.
For whom praise is due forever.
Elohei Kedem. The Elohei Kedem. The Elohim of the Kedem. The Elohim of the East. Look to the East. The Elohim of antiquity. Now, this word Kedem depends on the context it's being used in, right? Let's get down to the root part. But it can signify the ancient time or the Kedem, the first time. The sense of first, the first power of the Trinity, the first power of the triune, Ha-Elohim, right? Ish Ha-Elohim is like the man of the triune Elohim, right? The ancient time, aforetime, right? From the ancient time, the earliest time, the ancient time, at the beginning time. Or the sense of the east is because the Kedem is where the light of the sun rises from. This is why it's the Kedem, right? But actually the word has a sense of like the front or to go before, right? A sense of first time or before, the ancient time. It's a very interesting word right here from the Kadam. Kadam actually means to meet as a verb. The Kadam is the verb to come, to be in front, to confront, to go before, right? To meet, to go before, right? To meet or to go before. When we get to the root sense of the Kadam, and when we use it in the sense of the Almighty, it can also imply he projects, to project oneself, to proceed, to anticipate, but also as it's used in the scripts, right, to meet. Like in the psalm, there's a psalm that says, and he preventeth him with blessing. Now you might think prevent, but prevent is like stopping. But actually, the real sense is the kedem, kadam sense. He meet him, right? He anticipate. He go before him with blessing. That's the real sense. But the translator, messed up, right? Or didn't really get it, right? So the Elohim, right, of ancient times, of the first time, the Elohei kedem is Ma'ona, and underneath, right, are the, here it says everlasting, and here it uses the word olam. This word too sometimes is used to translate in English the sense of eternal, right? Olam. Olam can be used to translate eternal, right? Everlasting, eternal. But when it's dealing with time, it's dealing with time like out of mind, right? Time past the vanishing point. So it has a sense of forever in the Hebrew can mean forever future or forever past, because forever is determined by he who is forever. I mean, how will we know what forever is, right? Everlasting arms, right? And he shall thrust out the enemy, the oyeb, from before thee, from before your face. and shall say destroy. Once again, this is Moshe's words in Deuteronomy 33, verse 27. Ma'ona Elohei Kedem Ua Mia Tachata Zero Ta'olam Wa Yigaresha Mipaneka Oyev Wa Yomer Hashmed, destroy, annihilate, destroy. Boom. So here, the similarity where he's identifying Adonai, thou hast been our dwelling place, instead of saying forever, right, or of the Kedem, the first time, right, or the eternal arms, right, he says here, Adonai, Lord of mercy. Remember the prayer of Moshe, Lord of mercy, right? Thou hast been our dwelling place. Now, KJV, this is some of the false translations, says all. The word all is the same word as the word generation. You see where it says H1755 is the word door, door. Now we say door wa door. So the full of the verse, Adonai ma'on ata, hayita lanu bedor wa door. In a door, what's a door here? Hebraically, it's a generation, like a period of time, right? A generation, right? Generation often is characterized by quality, condition, or the class of men. Back in my granddaddy's generation, well, that wasn't like his great granddaddy's generation. So you see the different generation, like from the grandfather to the father to the son to the grandson. That sense of this is what it's speaking about from one generation to the next generation, right? And this is more correct here, the Hebrew, in generation and generation. Bedor, Wador. So here, our dwelling place in a generation and a generation. Adonai, Lord of his mercy, has proved himself to be a ma'on, right? Ma'on, a dwelling place, a refuge, a habitation, right? Not in a spasmodic way, like maybe here a little, there a little, no, but in one generation after another. And even in our Torah studies, we can see that testimony there, from the generation of the fathers and then the grandfathers and going down to the children and the children's children right there. So here is our opening verse right here, right, to this section right here, right? Let's go to the next verse right here, the Bates verse, just to get a good groundation. Still speaking here in the opening, right? The opening part of Moshe's prayer is an acknowledgement, right? Also calling on Yahweh by Adonai, Lord of his mercy, right? Thou hast been our dwelling place in a generation and a generation. And then scrolling down here to the second verse, the Beit verse, before the mountains, right? You've been our dwelling place. How long is this? Before the mountains were brought forth. Wow. Or ever thou hast formed the earth, or whenever it was, right, that thou hast formed the earth and the world. So you see, even back there, they wasn't really saying like 6,000 years. They wasn't dealing with that, right? Yeah, 6,000 years from what? You mean 6,000 years from the garden? From a particular instance, not saying when the earth was actually formed, right? Or ever thou hast formed the earth, right? And the world, right? The inhabitable portion of the world, even from everlasting, from eternity to eternity, thou art God. Here, let's bring out the Hebrew right here. It says, Bit Arem Harim, before the mountains Yuladu. So here, when it's talking about the mountains, when it says before the mountains were brought forth, Yuladu. Yuladu come from Yalad. Yalad means to be. A Yuladu, before they were brought forth, is like before they were born. It's almost like saying before the mountains were born, right? Bit Arem Harim Yuladu. Before the Harim, the Har mountain, Harim mountain, Bit Arem, before Bit Arem, Harim Yuladu, Wa Te Cholela Eretz, and before you Techolel, right? Before you Chul, before you put your sacred geometry, right, on the earth. You see the word Chul, right? What Techolel. Let's bring out the exact sense. It's the heat poel sense, right? Heat. Here we go. What Techolel, right? Here we go. The hit poel, to whirl, right? To spiral. It actually basically means to spiral. And this is what's interesting about the whole spiral and sacred geometry with the Hebraic words here. Right? You know, we haven't seen ones pick up directly on it yet, but ones are going to pick up on it. We keep talking about it, they'll pick up on it. All right. Remember where you heard it first, like the sacred geometry, the world, the that spiral. This is like saying the spiral, right? But at the same time, this word has a twofold sense. It's to rise, like to twist, to turn, right? Like in labor, right? But also it has a sense to like make a spiral, right? You know, to make a spiral. You see what it says right here? Properly to twist or to whirl in a circular or spiral manner. And that also seems, from observing the creation of Yahweh, that seems to be one of his fingerprints, right? You know, who done it, who created it. And here we could go into the word and we can make that connection. Is what is brought out right here when it says, or ever thou didst form. This is not the usual word for form, the yatzar word, but it's actually the chul and chil word, as we have here, wa te cholel, and before you know, formed up, you know what I mean, the eretz, wa te cholel eretz. You know, next time we do this, if we recall, you definitely have to have some pictures of the sacred geometric, you know, the spiral, you know, and seeing how the spiral, we find it throughout creation. You know, that spiral. That's what he's saying right here. Wa and techolel eretz, right? With tevel, the earth, and like the earth and the wet parts of the earth, the tevel. When it says world, it really means the tevel. What is the tevel? The tevel, let's bring it out. The tevel is, they translate BDB, just following the translation here, but Strong's bringing it out more correctly, more fully. It's the parts of the earth that are moist and therefore inhabitable. If you notice, ancient civilizations always seem to have rose up around riverbed, you know, like river, valley civilization where there was water. This is what it's bringing out here. Those are the tevel, you know, like the moist and the inhabitable portion. People can live anywhere, but some places it's not. It's kind of hard living, right? But these, like you can say the best spots, so to speak, you know. But the world, even from everlasting to everlasting. Let's bring that out right here. It says, Ume olam ad olam, ata el. Ume olam, and from, ume, and from olam, from eternity, from time out of mind, ad, going on to olam, going on to time indefinite, ata, you male, el, ata, el, Atael, you are El, you are the Almighty. This is what it's bringing out here in the second verse. So the mountains, the ancient mountains. Also, we have that as well, brothers and sisters, in Deuteronomy, in Moshe's other, you can say his other song and his other book, right? We have that in Deuteronomy chapter 33 and 15, right? Deuteronomy chapter 33, right? 33 and 15. Let's just bring it out, right? Show and prove here. And for the chief things of the ancient mountains, you see what it says? The chief things of the ancient mountain, and for the precious things of the lasting hills, right here. Ume rosha harare kedem. So the harare, remember the other verse said Elohei kedem, right? That translates the eternal God, or the Elohim of the kedem, right? Ume rosh, and from the rosh, right? From the head, the ras. Ume rosha harare kedem, and from the head of the mountains of the kedem, the mountains of the kedem. So here, Rosh is the chief, right? The word ancient here is brought out as Kedem. So we have Kedem right here again, and the Kedem is the same Afro-Shemitic root as we have in the name.
Kadamawi.
For whom praise is due forever.
So in the title, right, in the title of the elect of God, the chosen one, the elect of God, Kedamai Haile Selassie. We often say, people say Haile Selassie I, but the I is really the Kedamawi, and the Kedamawi is related to the Afro-Shemitic root from what we have even here Hebraically, right, as the Kedem, right? So notice how the Kedem, right, and what is it in Deuteronomy chapter 33:27 is translated as eternal, and over here the Kedem in Harare Kedem, the mountains of the Kedem. So Ume Rosha Hare Kedem Ua Mia Meged U Mi Meged Umia Meged Gebaota Olam, and for that which is the what? Precious things, the Meged, the excellent. Umi Meged, right? The excellent thing, the Meged, the distinguished, the valuable things. U Mia Meged Gibaot, and the Mia Meged, the Meged of the Gibaot, the precious things of the hills. The Giba is a hill, Gibaot are hills. U Mia Meged Gibaot Olam. And here we have Olam, of long duration, ancient, time out of mind, lasting. So here, another connection right here, just in the opening part of Moshe's, right, prayer, right here. Thou hast formed. The Hebrew verb is the normal one for the birth of a child. So the Hebrew formed right here, chul, chil, right? Watih cholel, full of verse, watih cholel eretza witevel, and you form, you birthed it, right? The earth and the moist and habitable portions of the earth. The Hebrew verb, as you mentioned, the normal one for the birth of a child, and it is used in thou, Yisrael, didst forget God that bore thee. Thou, Yisrael, did forget God, or we can say the God that bore thee. You want to know where this is at? You want to know where this is at? Once again, it's back to Moshe, right? Back to Moshe, back to the basics right here. So here we're in 32, 18. 32:18, right? 32. So this is the Ha'azino, right? This is the Ha'azino. This is the witness. Here it says, of the rock that begat thee, thou art unmindful. You're not mindful. Thou is Yisrael, right? You are unmindful, right? And then it says what? And has forgotten El, right? The El, the Almighty, the El that formed thee, the El that birthed it, right? That birthed thee. Here it says Sor, ye ladka. Sor, the rock, ye ladika, that birthed you, right? Teshi, right? Teshi, right? You Shaya, you forget, right? Teshi, you have forgotten, Teshi, right? You've forgotten to keep in memory, right? Teshi, right? Wa Tishkach, you're unmindful in that sense. You kind of slip your memory, right? Teshi. It's interesting here, right here, Teshi. Wa Tishkach, and you have forgotten El. You've forgotten the Almighty. Me Choleleka, right? So we have the Choleleka who has birthed you, right? Begotten thee. So when it says form, it's really like in the sense of begotten, right? So we can see even this comparison with with Psalm 90, right? And Deuteronomy 32 and 33. We've already think about maybe 3-4, right? Points of reference in just these two verses, right? So the world, as we mentioned right here, where it says the world is the Tebel. Tebel is translated as world, but here's where confusion comes in sometimes, right? In translation, the Tebel in this sense is the inhabitable portion of the world. When he says love not the world, he's not talking about this in that sense. You know what I'm saying? It's some things get kind of lost in translation. So the Tebel is the productive part of the earth that's inhabited by man. We have this in Psalm 24 and 1. The earth is Yahweh's and the fullness thereof, right? The world and all they that dwell in her, right? Because it's she that dwell in her, right? That dwell in her. So from everlasting to everlasting, right? From eternity going on to eternity, Uame Olam, and from eternity, time out of mind, Ad, going on to Olam, going on to time out of mind, Ume Olam, Ad Olam, Ata El, Ata El, Ata, you, male, El. You and none other is Almighty. You are the Almighty El. Ata El. You are the Almighty. So what do we have here? Before time was, and even after time shall cease, thee, O he who he be, will be. Right? You were, right? You be, and you will be. Right? Whether there's time or out of time. Right? Here, the Gimel verse, the third verse right here. It says, Thou turnest man to destruction. And sayest, return. Right? And sayest what? And sayest, return, O children of men. Right? Here, let's bring this out right here. Tashev Enosh Adaka. Tashev Enosh Adaka. Tashev Enosh, you turn mortal man, Enosh. Remember we talking about different words for man? Notice that Moshe is called the Ish. She's not called Enosh. Enosh is like a term like more mortal man. Man subjected to dying. Enosh, right? Enosh, right? Mortal man, right? Man of mortality. Tashev Enosh Adaka. Thou turnest Tashev Enosh, mortal man, Ad, toward, right? Going on to Adaka. Adaka, Daka. You turn man to Daka. So here, BDB brings it out as dust, right, in a literal sense, but in the figure, like to be contrite, to contrition, right? But the actual sense of daka is like crushing something to powder, like you crush it to powder. But in the figures of speech, feeling like you've been crushed to powder, make you very contrite, right? So others translate as thou turnest man to contrition, right? Adaka. On this interpretation, return means to me, the judge of the human spirit, to Yahweh Eloheinu. Elohim, the unchanging, is the refuge of changing and erring man. So it says that you are our refuge forever. Before time was, in time and out of time, it's about you. But man, he's here for a moment and he's gone the next moment, right? So return, Tashe, to he who he be, the judge of the human spirit. Elohim, the unchanging, is the Ma'on, the dwelling place of changing and erring and erroneous man and people. The Hebrew translation, right, often brings out more of contrition, while the King James Version brings out the sense of destruction, right? But contrition, right, also has the significance of dust, because literally, as we're showing you, it has a sense of crumble to powder, right? You turn man like to crumbling powder, right? To have him crumble like powder, right? Some connect this verse, like Ibn Ezra, connect this verse here with Genesis chapter 3 and in Bereshit chapter 3, Perek Gimel, right? Pasuk 19, right? Verse 19, right? Where it says, dust thou art, and to dust, Daka, shall thou return. Now the word, they use the word afar, but the word Daka means to crush something till it becomes like afar. It becomes like dust, right? Just to bring out the sense. So the word for man, let's get the word for man here. Enosh, Tashev Enosh, Adaka. Tashev Enosh, Adaka. So we have Enosh. Enosh denotes the human being in his frailty. Enosh denotes a human being, mortal man. I'm a man, I am mortal, in his frailty. Man in his frailty. We also have this in Psalm 3. And then 3, Slika. Psalm 8, right? Psalm VII. Psalm 8, and Hebraically verse 5. What is man that thou art mindful of him? So accordingly, the verse here it contrasts the fate of man, especially mortal man, Enosh, right? Who is to revert to dust, return to dust, with Ha'el, the Almighty's deathlessness and his eternalness, right? His foreverness, right? And then right here it says, Watomer, and you say, Watomer, what do you say? Shubu, B'nai Adam, Shubu, Shuvu, B'nai Adam, Shubu, 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 B'nai Adam, Shubu, return, Shubu, turn, like do teshuba, repent, turn. There's a sense of return here in shub, right? In shub right here, to turn back, right? It's almost like repent. The idea of teshuba is here, right? When he says shubu, return y'all, b'nai Adam, return y'all sons of Adam, return y'all children. When it says children of men, it's really Adam, right? B'nai Adam, children of men, human beings, right? To point to human beings. Let's hit verse 4, the Dalet verse. Going on, right? Just in the opening 1 to 6, El Ha'el's immortality and man's mortality. For 1,000 years in thy sight, as yesterday when it is past, as a watch in the night. Now, you see, even when Peter later on, Kepha, aka Peter, he just be like 1,000 years is as a day, 1,000 years in your sight is as a day. This is where Peter is reflecting on in the divine writing, right? In the scrolls. For 1,000 years in thy sight, as yesterday. The words are but are not there. So for 1,000 years in thy sight, as yesterday when it is past. And a watch. It's like a watch in the night. You know, like in Hebraically, there were different watches in the night. When he has, now you see the Hebrew sense brings out more when he have passed them. So let's read it again. For 1,000 years in thy sight are as yesterday when he has passed them, and a watch in the night. Let's bring it out right here, right? Let's go down to the Tanakh, right? It says Ki Elef, Ki for Elef, Ki Elef Shanima Be'aineka. Koyom etmol, ki ya'abor, we ashmora balayla. So ki, because, elef. What is elef? Elef is 1,000. Elef, 1,000. Accompany 1,000. Right? Ki elef shanim, for 1,000 years. Ki elef shanim be aineka, in your eyes. Right? Kayom, like yesterday, right? Like a day, like a day. Kayom, like a day. Etmol, a day yester, right? So kamol etmol mean yesterday, right? Like from yesterday. So it's like it's as a day, it's as yesterday, right? So it says kayom etmol. It's like yesterday or like a day yesterday. Ki, because or when, ya'abor, when he passes over, right? Kia ya'abor, right? With and ashmurah. So the ashmurah, there was the night watches, ashmurah by Lila. Ashmurah, like we are right now, we're doing, you know, when we have the podcast, is doing what would be like the ashmurah, right? Or ashmarot of the Lila, like a night watch, ashmurah. Right, let's go over here, right here. Where's Ashmurah? There we go, Ashmurah. Ashmurah, a watch, a period of time, and there were the various night watches. It passes so very swiftly. So let's look at the word Elef. Elef Shanim, right? Elef Shanim. Ki Elef Shanim be'aineka. For 1,000 years in thy sight, right? Kayom et mol ki yabor. As a day, as yesterday, when it is past, or when he has passed them, when he has passed, and we're Ashmara Balayla, and a night watch, or a watch in the night. Ashmara Balayla. So what do we have here? Continue the thought of the previous verse. The psalmist here, here ascribed to Tefillah LeMoshe, Moshe Isha Elohim, right? Continuing the thought of the previous verse, the psalmist proclaims that time has no meaning or limitation to Ha'el, to the Almighty, right? In the estimation of man, 1,000 years, Elef Shanim, Elef Shanim. 1,000 years is a vast stretch of time. In Ha'el, the Almighty estimation, it is like Kayom Etmol. It is like a day, it's like a yesterday. Not as the hours drag by slowly, that has gone and in retrospect appear very, very short. Nay. It is less even than that. So the psalmist here, prayer of Moses, Ish, right, Ha Elohim, continues. It is like a night watch, right? So it's like the day, like yesterday. It's already gone. No. It's like Ashmara Balayla. Ashmara. What? It's like a night watch, right? That's how short it is. In Psalm 63, roundabout Hebraically verse 7, brings up that same idea of like the night and the night watch. Of that, the sleeper, notice that the sleeper, right? Somebody during the night and they're sleeping, a sleeper takes no reckoning. And that has vanished. So all that time, how long and what person, how long we sleeping through the day or through the night or whatever, you wake up, it's gone. It's gone. Boom. But for us, it was like, man, that was quick. A whole day passed, a whole night passed, all those hours passed. Yeah, upon waking up. So right here, Kia left Shanim Ba'ineka. Kuyom etmol lakia yabor. Wa we ashmora balayla. So here to the fifth verse, the hey. This verse, this is all the contrast between he who be who he be's, right? Immortality and man's mortality. Thou carriest them away as with a flood. A flood. They are asleep. They are asleep. In the morning, like grass, groweth up. In the morning, like grass that changeth. Here, it says, Zeramtam Shaneya Yehiyu Ba Boker Ke Chatzir Ya Chalof Ke Chatzir Ya Chalof Ke Chatzir Ya Chalof. It is like, what it be like? He says, thou carriest them away as of a flood. Zeramtam, right? It says Zeramtam, you pour them out. Like pouring forth, like pouring like water out. Like almost like the idea is like somebody pouring water out. Like this is what you do to them. Right? Zeramtam, right? Shena. Zeramtam, right? You pour them out. Shena, right? Shena Yehiyu. Shena. So what is Shena? Shena is sleep. Shena Yehiyu. Shena. Remember, Shana is a year. Shana, we're talking about Shena, right? Shena is sleep, right? Shena Yehiyu. They become like sleep. They become like sleep. Right? Not like they are asleep, but they become like sleep. Baboker, in the boker. We say boker tov, good morning, in the break of day, in the boker, right? Baboker, in the day, ke chatzir, right? They are like grass, ke chatzir. They're like grass, chatzir, grass, like the green, like the herbage. Yachelof, that halafs, that passes away, that changes. You know how the grass changes and fades away. They fade away. That slides away. So what's being said here? Thou carriest zaramtam. The same verb is used in Psalm 77, Hebraically at the 18th verse, where it says, the clouds flooded forth waters. The same word, zaram, in zaram tam, right? They are poured out, right? As a sudden storm sweeps away a hut or a tent, so is man's life brought to a sudden end. Zaram tam is like poured out, right? So once again, Zaram tam shena Yehiyu. Shena Yehiyu. They become as asleep. They are asleep. It's like they all have become asleep. Not like they are sleeping, but they are asleep. They're like this thing that people do when they are asleep. It's sleep. They have become like the sleep. Shena Yehiyu. Shena. They are asleep. They are in a sleeping condition. Vis-a-vis, they're in the sleep of Mavet, the sleep of death. We have this in Psalm 76, roundabout he breaks the 6th verse. But what happens, Baboker? Baboker, in the morning, in the boker, right? In the boker, right? In the morning, they what? They grow up, right? Grow up, right? It says groweth up here, chalaf, pass on, right? To change, to grow. It can mean to grow up, but they slide, they hasten away. It's kind of spring up and change, right? Not spring up and continue, but spring up and change. The line is elaborated, this line here, in the next verse, right? But what are they like? Chatzir. They're like the chatzir. What's chatzir? Chatzir, chatzir is grass. They're like the grass, quickly, right, perishing. Right, it grows up fast and it fades away fast. The force of the simile here, Hebraically, is more apparent in the east, where the grass is described as shooting up in the morning, in the early spring, shooting up in the early spring with the greatest luxuriance in the east. It spring up is beautiful, beautiful. And then as rapidly seeding and dying down, scorched and burnt up at once. So see, we know like grass over here, and we think, oh, they're like this grass. But the context here was that grass. So that grass, it shoots up in the early spring, has the greatest luxuriance. Oh, so beautiful. Wow. And then as quickly as it shot up, right, seeding and dying down, it gets burned, right? Right? It gets scorched and burned, and it's done. So here the simile is likening what it is for man. What is man? The contrast between man, right, and the creator. In the morning, right, the grass, man is the analogy here, flourishes and groweth up. In the evening, it is cut down and withereth. Here. It says, Babokar Yatzitz. Babokar in the morning, Yatzitz. It suits, right? Seats, right? Yatzitz, it blossoms, it sparkles, it shines, it's blossoming, right? Babokar, in the boker, Yatzitz, where Chalaf, and it grows up, Chalaf, it goes through this process, right? Chalaf, it goes through this change, right? La Ereb, and for the evening, Yimolel, it is like circumcised, it's cut, right? Where Yabesh, and it withers, right? So the mul molal, it is circumcised, it's cut off, right? It's circumcised, it's cut down. So here, Babok Ariasis, where Halaf, La Reba Yimolel, where Yabesh. So what do we have here? This also is brought out in Psalm 37, right? 37, I think around about the second verse. Since we're in the Psalms, let's go to Psalm 37. Is it the second verse? Boom, 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 boom. For they shall soon be cut down like the grass, and wither as the green herb. Kia kachatzir. Mehera, fast, mehera, yemalu is circumcised, cut down, right? Is cut down. It's namal, right? Another form from the mul to circumcise is clipped off, right? It's clipped off. Ki kahatzira mehera yemalu uka yereka deshe yibolun. Ukadereka deshe yibolun, and it withers, right? Ka yerek, like the green, the color, the green, the greenness. Its color, it fades, right? This right here is actually not really so much green, but it's like the the fading, like the fading, the emptiness of his color, desha, right? Uka yereka desha, and like the green desha, the green grass, the green herb, right? Yerek desha, uka yereka desha, yebolun, it nabel. Now notice Nabal, like Nabal means foolish, like the Nabal, right? It says Nabal Belibo Ain Elohim. The fool says in his heart there's no God, but the secondary sense of the word Nabal is to sink, to drop down, to fade, right? So like fool and fade, that's kind of interesting right there, ain't it? So right there, they're there, just a kind of little groundation in this psalm right there. Like to basically touch on at least one particular area right here before we seal up right here, because as we mentioned, from verses 7 to 12, right, we get a whole other section right here in verses 7 to 12, right? And this section, as we mentioned in the intro, right, is distinctly historical, but many people have taken this section, to like, especially verse which verse is it? Let's see if we get to the verse. For we are consumed by thine anger, and by thy wrath are we troubled. Remember, this is Moshe, right? Remember all the prayers that he prayed for Yisrael, the intercessions. So what we get here is like a prayer that speaks to the same condition that he's speaking to, right? So we go over here. Let's do this like this. Let's go like this. Verse 8. Thou hast set our iniquities before thee, our secret, in the light of thy face, thy countenance. For all our days are passed away in wrath. Wasn't it like that for the wilderness Israelites, especially those who did not go into the land? We spend our years as a tale, right? As a tale, right? Here, Hagar, almost like a groaning, like a sigh. Not a tale. People get the idea it's like a tale, like people talk your story, whatever, right? Some say as a meditation, but this is Hagar. Hagar is like a grumbling, like a sigh, right? But of course, when people are sighing, something they're muttering, like, yeah, oh man, yeah, yeah, how it was there, it was like, yeah, really bad. So, like that's how they were spending their time in the wilderness. Now, it's this verse here that people have, and people have missed. Well, mainly the teachers, the pastors and preachers, they have misconstrued this. They should know better, right? That this is the prayer of Moses, right? And it's a context. There's nowhere in the scripture that it says like, okay, you got this many years, but this specifically speaks to that wilderness generation of Israelites in this particular verse, a 70, right? Now, there are those who will say, well, this song can't be Moses. And we ask them, well, why do you say the psalm can't be Moses? They say, well, if it was Moses' psalm, look at verse 10. Okay, let's look at it. The days of our years are 70 years and 10. Well, a score is 20. 20 times 3 is 60. Plus 10 is 70. Okay, that's 70 years. And if by reason of strength, 40, so 20, a score is 20, so that'll be 80, right? Yet their strength, labor, and sorrow, for it is soon cut off, and we fly away. Right? Remember how Moses was pleading to go into the promised land, but he was told that no, you're only going to get to see it, but you're not going to go in with this generation. So some would say, well, against Moses being the author, right, of the psalm, right, both Moses and Aaron, their ages exceeded the age of 100. And this is true. Moses and Aaron were well past 70 and 80 years, right? Moses was 120 and his brother, I think, was 137 or something like that. But definitely they were older. Now, the answer to such an objection, right? Because when we say it's the prayer of Moses, we prove it's the prayer of Moses. And some say, well, this one thing here means to them it's not Moses because he's saying our years. Remember, Moses, even though Moses was not in the wrong in many instances, Moses prayed and he besought Adonai, Yahweh Eloheinu, Elohe Yisrael, on behalf of Israel. So even though he didn't commit the crime, like you didn't commit the crime, right? That means you have better standing than the person you're appealing for, right? So he include himself, right, with that because he's the one that brought them out, right? If you know about the Exodus narrative, then all of this should become very, very clear, right? So the prolonged lives of certain conspicuous persons like Moshe in that period do not wander a conclusion as to the average length of life. So, because Moses lived to be 120 and Aaron's like 130 something, doesn't mean that, especially the wilderness generation, remember they had 40 years. Yahweh says a day, right? A year for a day. So they spent 40 days in spying out the land. And when they brought back the evil report and the people believed it and want to go back to Egypt, Yahweh was going to destroy them. But what did Moses do? He pleaded. And even in Deuteronomy, he goes over that. He says, it's because of you that he almost like, says that because of the people is part of the reason that he's in the same condition as them, not going to go into the promised land. But his age is still his age. Remember, he was 80 years old when he was commissioned to go into action. So he's actually 80 years old. So we can't take that particular fact of the one who's praying, especially on behalf of those who had fallen short, right? Take that as a dismissal that is Moses. And the generation that fell in the wilderness can clearly, look it over, not have lived beyond the psalmist's limitation here. When we think about the generation that came out, like the grown men especially. Remember when Yahweh said nobody like 20 something years old and upward, right? That was a part of that number. So if they were 20 something years, 40 years, right? 40 and 20 is what? That's 60, right? So some dropped at 60. Some was a little older. They dropped at 70, right? The others that may have been a little older, they dropped at 80, right? Give or take. But basically, they dropped, right? And this is what Moses is talking about right here, right? By reason of strength, more than the average, vitality. Now, there's a difference in translation for what you have here in the KJV, just to bring this out. Let's go down here to Tanakh, right here where it says, Yemeya Shinotenu, the days of our years, right? Yemeya Shinotenu, Bahem, in them, Shebaim Shana, are 70 years, We'im, and if, Bia Geborot, and if by being mighty, like being strength, might, you know what I mean? Shemonim, 80 Shana, Shemonim Shana, 80 years. Even if you put Gebura is this word here, even if one has strength, and might, as a person, force, and they, push it, maybe they'll reach, Shemonim Shana, where Rahbam Amal, where Rahbam Amal. Now here's where we kind of change here, where it says in the KJV, it says what it says over here in the King James Version, it says, yet their strength, labor, and sorrow. Looking at the Hebrew right here, yet their pride is but travail and vanity. Yet their pride is but travail, right, and vanity. Here we're in verse 10, right here. Where Rahibam Amal wa aven. Va'aven, Amal, right? Let's break down these words. So yet their Rohab, right? Rohab, yet their arrogance, their pride, right? So you see how the King James translate that what? Strength. Their strength. We notice the word strength over here. The word strength over here is Gebura. So you see how that can give a false interpretation. If you just trust on this, if by reason of strength, that's Gebura, right? A different thing. This is not even properly the word for strength, right? This is Rohab, right? Rohab, Rohabam, right? Where Rohabam, Amal, Wa Awen, right? Is Amal, is toil, trouble, mischief, toil, like This word for toil, amal, is wearying effort, worry, toil, grievance, right? Right? And, right, it says sorrow. The word for sorrow, aven or awen, right? Here we have with rohabam, amal, wa awen, wa aven, va aven, and wickedness, trouble. But notice this here is exerting yourself. This word is like exerting yourself. It is a weary, just weary. Even for the soul, this pride, their pride is talking about the Israelites, right? For it is soon cut off. Remember, Moshe had to witness the whole generation. He witnessed that whole generation. Can you imagine that? You'll be saying a prayer too. You're gonna be like, wow, look at this, right? For it is soon cut off, and we fly away. Remember Moses, because of what had happened, he also was prevented from entering in, and what he said to the Israelites, it's because of you, right? In a sense, because my love for you, and well, it was his own fault, but part of that was because Yahweh had told him to stand back, let me destroy them. Moses said no, right? And Yahweh said, I forgave them according to what you said, but in the day that I visit, he's going to judge things, right? So the same word, right? Man is born of trouble. So when you see where it says their strength is labor, labor and sorrow, more better, their pride is travail and vanity. So the travail, right, and vanity, the same word is used in Job 5 and 7. In Job 5 and 7, right? Job 5 and 7. Let's hit Job 5 and 7 to show you the same word. It says, yet man is born into trouble. Man is what? Born into trouble as sparks fly upward. Let's take the note. So look what it says, trouble is labor. You see, trouble, travail, trouble, labor. But it's like labor, not just regular work labor, but like labor that you working hard, but it's like almost for nothing, right? The sons of burning coal lift up to fly. Look what it says, the Hebrew. So the English says as sparks fly upward, but the Hebrew says, right, the sons of burning coal lift up to fly. But of course, if you translate like that, people be like, well, what does that mean? Ki Adam le amal, Yulad, right? Yulad is born. For Adam, for a man, Adam, Ki Adam, for Adam, for a human being, Ki Adam le amal, like for amal. Same word, amal, toil, trouble, labor, trouble, mischief, right? Wearing effort, worry of the body, worry of the mind. Ki Adam le amal yulad is born. For Adam is born, right, for trouble or born into this wearying situation. Ua Beneya Reshef, and the sons of like burning coals. U Beneya Reshefa Yaga Yag Bihu Uf, right? Gaba exalts up and like flies away. This here almost matches, if you look at the key words and the context, what we have over here, where it says, for it is soon cut off, right? Where it says, for it is soon what? Cut off, right? Ki gaza chish, wa na afa, wa na ifa, and we fly off, right here, where it says, ki gaz chish, wa na ufa, slika, wa naufa, oof. To fly off, there it is. Oof, there it is. To fly about. Oof. Right? Naufa, and we fly away. Right? Remember in the previous, it was about the sons of the burning coals, like fly, yeah, spark and fly off. So the vanity is the wretchedness of the condition, and we fly away, right? He, man, shall fly away as a dream. Let's go one more verse for Job before we seal up. Right here. Here we have Job again. Job 20, right? Let's go to Job 20, right? Job 20 and 8. Job 20 and 8. Here we go. He shall fly away as a dream. Wow. And shall not be found. Yea, he shall be chased away. as a vision of the night. Ain't that something? Chased away as a vision of the night. Chase of it. Maybe people had some kind of nightmares and just ran it off in some way. Here it says ka chalom yaufa welo yema sauhu, where you died ka chezyon laila, as a chezyon of the night, chezyon laila, right? Where you died, and will be nadad, like caused to depart, right? To flee, to chase off, to like we flood away birds or something like that, wave them away, like get away, right? So here, ka chalom, like a dream, yauf, oof, he shall what? Oof, fly about, right? Ka chalom, Yauf, with law and not with law, Yemasau, they finding who? They will not find him. With law, Yemasau, who? Yemsau, they finding who? Him. Law, not Yemsau, who? They will not find him. Where you died, and he will be like chased, flooded, like get away, get out of here, right? Where you died, ke chezron laila, like a chezron. So here we have chez. That's it, chezron, ke chezyon. My bad. Where you died, ke chezyon, laila. Like chazon, Revelation is called chazon, and here it says ke chezyon laila. Full, ka chalom yauf, welo yimsauhu. Where you died, ke chezyon laila, So right there, right here. So this is not saying that ones have like an expiration date, but it's speaking of that wilderness generation, what they went through, and also some of the reasons why they went through. But in spite of all of that, right, let's bring it down here, right, just to glide over this for a moment. Some good verses here, but of course, including this verse right here. So teach us to number our days, right, that we may apply heart to wisdom, right, that cause us to apply or cause to come to wisdom, chokmah. Remember what Yeshua says, Yeshua HaNotzri, Justice of Nazareth. Wisdom is justified by all of her children, right? Wisdom, right? Wisdom is the principal thing. Here it says, limnot yamenu. Limnot, to number, yamenu, our days. Cain. Yes. Hoda, yes, to know. Hoda, right? Hoda, where nabi. Hoda, where nabi, right? Where nabi lebaba hakma. Where nabi, right? Right? To enter in, to come into, to enter into, right? So it's not just to come to wisdom, but to apply, to enter in our lebab, our inner man, our inner understanding, our reflection, inclination to that which truly is wisdom, right? This is, it wouldn't mean like an inner wisdom based on the Hebrew of it, limno to yamenu, kain hoda, where nabi, so that we enter in, where nabiya lebab, right? Entering in our heart chokmah, entering in our heart wisdom, that wisdom may kind of like, we call us to enter in, right? We enter into wisdom and wisdom enter into us, that inner wisdom. So right there, this verse right here, right? To number our days, realizing how few they may be, and then they will be so employed. We'll use that time that each tomorrow finds us further, right? In the way, the truth, the life than today. A heart of wisdom, right? Lebab chokmah, enter into a heart of wisdom. The same thought as what Moshe said, right? Moshe exhorted in Deuteronomy 32 and 29. He said, if they were wise, they would understand this. They would discern their latter end. They would discern right? The latter end, right? And so right here, just to come to fulfillment here, the closing part, 13 to 17, is a prayer for the return of Yahweh's favor, right? Return, O Yahweh, how long? And let it repent thee concerning thy servants. Satisfy us in the morning with thy mercy, that we may rejoice and be glad all of our days. Make us glad according to the days wherein thou hast afflicted us, according to the years wherein that we have seen evil. Make thy work appear to thy servants, and thy glory up on their children, right? And may the graciousness of, here it says, Adonai Eloheinu, of the Lord our God, Adonai Eloheinu, be upon us. Establish thou also up on us the work of our hands. Yea, yes, the work of our hands, establish thou it. Right here. Full right here. Today's daily psalm, Psalm 90. Go into the Hebrew and then seal up with the Anglit, with the English. Today's daily psalm. Here, dubwise, the Jajarobe, right? Jajarobe.
Kings wore robes of golden velvet, and soon their glory fades away.
תהילים, ספר רביעי, מזמור צדה. תפילה למשה איש האלוהים. אדוני, מעון אתה היית לנו בדור ודור. בטרם הרים יולדו ותחולל ארץ ותבל, ומעולם עד עולם אתה אל. תשב אנוש עד דקה ותאמר, שובו בני אדם. כי 1000 שנים בעיניך כיום אתמול כי יעבור, ואשמורה בלילה. זרמתם שינה יהיו. בבוקר כחציר יחלוף, בבוקר יציץ וחלף, לערב ימולל ויבש. כי חלינו ואפיך, ובחמתך נבהלנו. שתה עוונותינו לנגדך, עלומנו למאור פניך. כי כל ימינו פנו ועברתך, חילינו שנינו כמוהגר. ימי שנותינו בהם 70 שנה, ואם בגבורות 80 שנה, ורוחבם עמל ואבן, כי גז חיש ונעופה. מי יודע עוז אפיך וכליראתך עברתך? למנות ימינו כן הודע, ונביא לבב חוכמה. שובה אדוני עד מתי, והנחם על עבדיך. סבענו בבוקר חסדך, ונרננה ונשמחה בכל ימינו. שמחנו כמו תעניתנו, שנות ראינו רעה. יראה אל עבדיך פעוליך, והדרך על ביניהם. ויהי נועם אדוני אלוהינו עלינו, ומעשה ידינו כוננה עלינו, ומעשה ידינו כוננהו.
Lion of Judah Society.
Lord, thou hast been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever thou hadst formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, thou art God. Thou turnest man to destruction, and sayest, Return, ye children of men. For 1,000 years in thy sight are but as yesterday when it is past, and as a watch in the night. Thou carriest them away as with a flood. They are as asleep. In the morning they are like grass which groweth up. In the morning it flourisheth and groweth up. In the evening it is cut down and withereth. For we are consumed by thine anger, and by thy wrath are we troubled. Thou hast set our iniquities before thee, our secret sins in the light of thy countenance. For all our days are passed away in thy wrath. We spend our years as a tale that is told. The days of our years are 80 years and 10. And if by reason of strength they be 80 years, yet is their strength labor and sorrow. For it is soon cut off, and we fly away. Who knoweth the power of thine anger? Even according to thy fear, so is thy wrath. So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. Return, O Lord, how long? And let it repent thee concerning thy servant. O satisfy us early with thy mercy, that we may rejoice and be glad all our days. Make us glad according to the days wherein thou hast afflicted us, and the years wherein we have seen evil. Let thy work appear unto thy servants, and thy glory unto their children. And let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us. And establish thou the work of our hands upon us. Yea, the work of our hands, establish thou, establish thou, establish thou, establish thou.
Yes. Lila Tov, Boker Tov. Have a blessed day. Blessed Shabua right here. 4th day coming forward. A lot going on. Be safe. Stay in the way, the truth, and the life. Shabua Tov.
Shavua Tov. A good 7. Good strong. Sabbatically speaking. Yes, I. Shalom, Chaverim. Shalom. Give thanks.
Toda Rabba. Enough thanks. Yes,
Thank you for whatever you have done. Thank you, my brethren, for all your contributions.
This discipleship radio broadcast has been made possible by donations from audience and listeners like you. Give thanks. Thank you very much, Miss Ghana. This discipleship radio broadcast has been made possible by donations from audience and listeners like you. Give thanks. Thank you very much, Miss Ghana.
Laila Tov, Boker Tov, and a Shavua Tov, Chavarim. Be well.
Lion of Judah shall break every chain.